Salt spray lashed the deck of the Silence as night folded over the smoking sea. Staring into the roiling black, Euron Greyjoy tasted rust on the wind, a scent of old Valyria's melted swords and broken crowns, and felt the faint, pulse-quickening throb that had led him here. It was not mere wanderlust this time, nor the mocking whisper of the winds that sounded like his drowned brothers calling from the deep. It was something older, deeper, beating like a heart beneath stone. Weeks earlier, in a tavern on the Stepstones, a half-mad Lyseni slaver had spoken of a glow beneath shattered towers and slagged spires. An ember tucked in the bones of Valyria, hot as the day for dragons died screaming. An egg, the slaver claimed, mottled red and smoky black, warm to the touch even after centuries in the dark. Most men laughed, and the Lyseni's tongue was cut out for blasphemy. Euron only smiled, bought the man's silence with gold, and sailed the Silence eastward under a moon that looked bruised and swollen with secrets. Now the island of memory itself stood before him, if the tangle of broken stone and glassy obsidian could be called an island at all. Columns twisted like corkscrews jutted from eddies of yellow vapor. Rivers of half-hardened rock hissed where the sea crept in. Lightning crawled in branching webs across a night sky the color of a healing wound. Euron's crew muttered prayers to the drowned god, but the words stuck in their throats like fishbones. Even dampened by fear, they obeyed, rowing the Silence through dagger-sharp reefs that grated against her flanks. On the third tide, when the ash-laden air grew hot enough to sear lungs, they reached a cavern mouth scabbed in red glass. No songbird cried above it, no bat flitted. Only a low, throbbing hum, felt more than heard, emanated from the depths. Euron ordered 3 men forward, thralls taken on the Basilisk Isles, worth no more to him than ballast. They vanished inside with torches sputtering. When the first scream sputtered out, all songs of prayer died with it. The second scream was shorter. The third never came at all. Euron followed. He carried a lamp caged in dragonglass panes. Its flame burned cobalt blue, stolen from a warlock of Karth whose mask still hung on the Silence's prow, grinning. Shadows fled before that unnatural fire, but new ones swarmed behind like starving wolves. The tunnel wound downward in molten spirals. Flecks of glass crunched beneath Euron's boots. Where the flecks touched the lamp's light, they bled red as garnets. He found the thralls near a crater of fused basalt. One knelt, head bowed as if in reverence, but his back was split from nape to spine. The second lay on his side, eyes bubbled white, hands clutching nothingness. The third had burst, skin emptied like a wineskin, all liquid boiled away. In the crater's center, half buried in ribs of slag, rested the egg. It was smaller than Euron expected, perhaps half again the size of a cradle rock, but heavy with promise. Its shell shimmered with swirling rivers of dark crimson and oily jet, as though blood and night fought for dominion. Heat rolled off it in waves that made sight stutter. With every pulse, the cave lit from within by dull red glow.
Euron estate vibrated.
He thought he heard wings, great leathery wings, flapping just beyond the curve of the world. He laughed. He tasted iron. He reached out. The shell's surface burned. Pain so pure it made him gasp, and yet cold rippled beneath as if the egg drew warmth like a leech. His palm smoked, skin blistered and split. Still he held on, fingers closing until the tips met beneath. Somewhere deep inside, something coiled tighter, listening. Euron drew a dagger and pressed it to the pad of his thumb. Blood welled black in the lamp's blue light. One drop fell, hissing where it struck the shell. The egg thrummed, and the cavern roof rained dust. "You are mine," Euron thought, and the egg answered with a quake that staggered him to his knees. He bore it out cradled against his chest like a lover. Sailors at the mouth shrank back, some sobbing, some crossing themselves in tangled sigils of drowned faith. Smoke rose from Euron's arms where shell met skin, but he seemed not to feel it. He only watched the sky, and in the thunderless hush between waves he imagined he heard a crack, hairline, spidering, questing for breath. Markdown, diamond suit. The crossing west was a fever dream. Winds howled senseless dirges. The sea shimmered purple under no moon they knew. Men swore they saw silhouettes pacing the waves. Tall shapes crowned in molten iron whose mouths were furnaces. One night a sailor leapt into the deep whispering "Mother," and never surfaced. Another carved 3 eyes into his cheeks before swallowing his own tongue. Through it all, Euron kept the egg in a box of weirwood lined with black velvet. Every dusk he opened the box, held the shell to the stars, and murmured in tongues the crew pretended not to hear. Salt water boiled where each drop of his blood touched the deck. When he closed the box, the masts groaned like living things. He came at last to Lordsport bearing storm clouds behind him like banners. News of Balon's death had reached every corner of the Isles, and men jostled for place at the Kingsmoot. But the moment Euron strode ashore carrying that smoking bundle, the quarrel ceased. Aron Damphair stepped forward to rebuke the crow's eye, but when he beheld what lay in Euron's arms, his throat closed on scripture. The salt breeze faltered, and a hush spread as though every gull had forgotten its cry. Euron set the egg upon a stone plinth where the tide lapped. Fingers laced behind his back, he smiled, an expression with no mirth, only hunger, as if the world were a fruit he might bite. "Brothers," he said, voice carrying clear across the quay, "have you come to name a king or kneel to a god?" Asha pushed forward, face pale. Tricks and relics do not crown kings. She tried to sound taller than she was, tried to keep her eyes from lingering on the shell pulsing at Euron's side. "We are ironborn. We pay the iron price." Euron tipped his head. "So pay." He nudged the egg with a boot. "Pay flesh and fear, until the sea itself bends." The shell let out a hairline crackle, a soft, keening note like distant ice breaking. Steam coiled around the plinth, and stones hissed where drops of water touched them. Asha stepped back. Theon, gaunt and ragged from Ramsay's torments yet clinging to some spark, reached for her arm but found only air. Aron began a prayer, but the words slipped. Everywhere around, Ironborn felt the weight of centuries, heard the echo of banners once trampled by dragonflame, saw in their mind's eye ships listing in Blackwater smoke. Yet this time the dragon would rise beneath their own slate skies, wearing salt crust and brine like scales. That evening, men whose grandfathers had mocked Aegon's sister queens as weak Southron witches knelt before Euron's egg, kissing the shell until their lips blistered. By torchlight they swore oaths not to a king of salt and rock, but to something bound in the marrow of the earth. They cut their palms with rusted knives and slicked the egg in blood. When the shell drank the offering, truly drank, for no liquid dripped, cheers gave way to whimpers. Aron wept salt tears. The drowned god had no scripture for this. Markdown, diamond suit. At Pike, Euron chose the seastone chair room, long abandoned since Balon's corpse fell to the sea, as his forge of hatching. There, amid wet walls crusted with barnacle, he built a pyre of driftwood soaked in whale oil. He lashed to it 30 thralls, sailors taken in raids, green boys from the Shield Islands, a Myrish woman whose eyes burned spite, each gagged with rough linen. Above them he slung bronze braziers filled with wildfire, stolen once from a pyromancer in King's Landing. Green ghost flames licked the stone as Euron's captains looked on, uneasy. Asha confronted him in the shadow of the hall. "This will break the Isles," she said. Her voice wanted to tremble. She choked the tremor. "You think dragons bow? They feast, brother. They scorch the world white." Euron studied her, eye patch twitching with some private amusement. "A dragon hatched in smoke and salt is a creature of tides. It will worship the wind that birthed it and the storm that crowned it." He brushed her cheek as though she were still a little girl climbing the ropes of his ship. "When it breaks its shell, the first breath it draws will be brine, and the first name it hears will be mine. What has ever bowed that I did not break first, dear sister?" Asha spat. "May your dragon eat your other eye." He laughed, genuine now. "Then I will see twice as far." On the night of full tide, Euron climbed the pyre bearing the egg swaddled in black sailcloth. Around the hall, clergymen of the drowned god chanted, though the verses ran backward, twisted into shapes unholy. Torchlight painted the wet walls amber. Somewhere high above, waves crashed and the floor trembled. The air reeked of salt and resin. Euron placed the egg upon the breast of a tethered boy, no more than 12, blue eyes wide. He whispered into the shell, words older than Valyria, syllables that sounded like anchors grinding against hulls. Then he smashed the first brazier from its chain. Wildfire poured over the pyre in a cataract of emerald fury. Flames screamed where they touched flesh. Thralls writhed, cords snapping as muscles convulsed, but iron spikes held them fast. Their screams mingled with the roar of chemical fire until neither could be told from the other. The egg drank heat, drank sound, drank life. Its cracks widened, glowing like rifts into dawn. Pale smoke. No, not smoke. Mist shot through with sparks, spiraled upward, twining with flames. In its shapes moved coils, talons, half-remembered shadows of flight. Euron, untouched, lifted his arms as though to embrace the storm. Fire raced across his sleeves and died. When the second brazier fell, the pyre collapsed in a rush of sparks that stank of burnt marrow. Chains clattered. A wave of heat blasted outward, and stone long soaked by waves hissed and spat. Asha, watching from the doorway, shielded her face. Theon shrank behind a pillar. Euron collapsed to his knees and wept foam. Then came the sound, thin but clear. A crack. Not stone, not timber, but egg. Came again, louder. A fissure spidered across the shell, splitting the red from the black. The glow within strengthened until the shell seemed to float in its own light. With a final thunderclap, the shell burst outward in shards that melted before they struck the pyre. Where the egg had been, a creature writhed. Slick, half-blind, drenched in blood not its own. Wings no larger than gull sails beat feebly, drying in the furnace. Scales shimmered the color of midnight hammered thin, beneath veins glowing red. Its eyes opened, one gold, one the deepest green of wildfire. Fixed on Euron, hissed, and the hiss caught fire. Flame gout from its throat. A flash of green that rolled across the pyre, snuffing its last embers by consuming them wholly. In the hush afterward, the infant dragon crawled across char-blackened ribs and scorched rope toward Euron's outstretched hand. Its claws hooked his flesh. Smoke rose, he did not flinch. It climbed to his shoulder and coiled its tail round his throat, a living torque of dark metal and embers. There it perched, steam curling from its jaws. Euron turned to the watching captains. His smile glowed dragon green in the blaze's dying light. "Kneel," he said, as gentle as the sea at dawn. Men knelt. The dragon spat a bead of flame into the sea-stone chair. The driftwood fossil flared blue where the fire kissed it. Runnels carved by centuries glowed, like veins of light awakening in dead coral. Euron sat, the hatchling on his shoulder flicking its wings. The hall smelled of char, salt, and new life. Marked down, diamond suit, days bled into weeks. The dragon, named Tempest, doubled in size faster than fish rot. It dined on goats shipped from Harlaw, on casks of lamprey soaked in oil, even on the corpses of those who doubted. Its scales hardened from night sheen to lusterless iron, edged in sea-green seams. When it beat its wings atop the cliffs of Pike, gulls fled screaming. The sea answered, waves hammering basalt like war drums. Euron wore scale-patterned mail forged from the melted egg shards. It ran dark as low tide across his chest, and where moonlight touched it, the metal shone blood-red. He rode the dragon the first time under a storm thicker than wool. No saddle, no chain. From the watchtowers men saw only ink swirling in ink as lightning forked to reveal him in silhouette. A one-eyed shadow astride a serpentine monster, wings spread wider than sails, fire trailing from its throat. Some swore thunder answered his laughter. On that night, half the Iron Islands bent the knee beyond hope of rising again. The rest sharpened knives, not to fight but to slit their own throats, for better to drown in blood than burn in salt flame, they said. Asha gathered what ships she could, 11 swift longships, hulls painted black, and fled north, hoping to reach White Harbor and warn the north of the storm brewing beyond their maps. Theon went with her, hollow-eyed. Euron vanished into the surf. Some said he walked until water closed over his head and was not seen again. Euron watched their departure from a battlement of weeping stone. Tempest clung to his arm, now longer than a spear, and crooned, curious. "Let them carry tales," Euron murmured. "Fear sails faster than oar or wind." He traced the dragon's jaw, feeling heat shimmer off iron scales. "Soon, little storm, we will feast on crowns." In the distant gloom, the Silence's masts swayed like spears, and the fleet beyond war sails dyed a red so dark it bled into night. Fires burned on every deck, torches, braziers, cages of singing wildfire, to beckon the dragon and light his way. Tempest spread its wings, and sparks danced along the membrane, emerald and amethyst. When it beat them once, the sea below churned, pulling ships outward like toys caught in a draining bath. Euron closed his remaining eye and imagined the mainland stretched beneath them. Fields golden with ripe wheat, towns smelling of horse dung and hearth smoke, castles that had never feared the sea now watching skies they did not understand. He tasted ash already. Marked down, diamond suit. The first raid fell upon Fair Isle under a hunter's moon. None expected the Ironborn so late in harvest. Villagers stood mesmerized as what they thought a storm cloud descended on a tail of lightning. Then the cloud screamed, and the lightning turned green. Tempest dove low, wings scraping treetops. Pine needles burst into embers where sparks fell. Its breath came cold as the grave and hot as hell at once, a paradox that shattered stone and boiled blood. Ironborn surged through the smoke, axes wet with brine, singing of the old way. Faircastle's banners melted before they burned. Men within died unseen, breathing glass as windows liquefied from heat. A sept half a millennium old flared like an autumn leaf when dragonfire found its spire. Bells meant for prayer clanged once, warped, and dripped molten bronze into the nave. In the courtyard Euron rode Tempest, cloak snapping, laughing at flames that painted him green. He left survivors, always, children hidden in cellars, smiths too lame to flee, whores wrapped in smoke-stained sheets. To each he spoke the same words. "Tell the mainland the crow's eye has taken wing. Tell them the sea has learned to fly." Then he let Tempest roar over their heads so the whites of their eyes reflected fire. Not fear, he believed, but the memory of fear. That was the truest hostage. Within a moon's turn, lords from the arbor to the crag were sending riders inland, begging their liege to call banners. Ravens dashed themselves against panes and kings landing trying to deliver a single message: "Dragon in the west." Cersei laughed at first. Reports of dragons had dogged the throne for years, but when word came from the reach of fields scorched to glass and iron-born sails vanishing into morning haze, mirth curdled. She dispatched a fleet under Orain Waters' new-made admiral to trap Euron near the Shield Islands. Waters sailed with banners bright and proud. He came upon the Silence at dusk, found her alone, sails furled, listing gently on a glass-smooth sea. His galleys formed a crescent, oars churning silver. Captains shouted for surrender. Then the sky broke open. Tempest rose from beneath, bursting through the surface in a geyser of steam. Its wings, broader than any sail, flung spray that blinded men. It climbed, black shape haloed in sunset, then stooped, screaming. Euron stood on the Silence's prow, arms spread, hair plastered to his skull with brine. He heard the distant whine of scorpions, saw iron bolts wink in the light like insects. Every bolt missed. Tempest's fire consumed 3 galleys in a sheet of green. Masts toppled. Rigging snapped. Men leapt burning into water that refused to douse them. Wildfire's kiss lingered, dancing atop waves like spiteful sprites. The rest of the fleet tried to scatter, but wind failed them. Tempest's wings stole it. It landed on the flagship, crushing decks, and the dragon's tail lashed, knocking sailors into churning green. Fire reached powder. Thunder bloomed. The flagship vanished in a plume of smoke shaped like a crown shredding. Orain Waters was last seen clinging to a spar as it drifted through flame, shouting for mercy none could grant. When the smoke cleared, the Shield Islands had vanished beneath a horizon of cinders. Ravens reached King's Landing bearing charred fragments of sailcloth, melted brass, bits of bone fused with iron. Cersei ordered the city gates barred, as if wood and iron could bar nightmare. Qyburn whispered of scorpions thrice the size of men. Cersei wanted bells rung day and night, lest dragonfire fall while the city slept. After 2 days, the ringing drove small folk mad. In the Iron Islands, Euron fashioned a new crown, beaten from the melted steel of Arrane's anchors, inlaid with shards of the hatchling shell. Tempest's scales had shifted hue again. Now they gleamed a dark teal like waves under moonlight, edges rhymed in a pale glow suggesting ice. The dragon perched atop the Widow's watchtower, eyes glimmering with ever-burning wildfire. Euron addressed his people from the battlements. "Salt is your mother," he intoned, voice carrying across foam and rock, "and Storm your father. You have knelt to them long enough." He spread his arms. Tempest answered with a roar that shook gulls from the air. "Now the sky is yours. Take it." Ironborn cheered, axes clanging on shields. Markdown, diamond suit. Winter's first breath crept across Westeros as rumors flew faster than ravens. Small folk spoke of a winged shadow that devoured moons, of a one-eyed corsair crowned in green flame. In Old Town, Archmesters scoured dusty scrolls for ways to bind dragons, finding only cautionary tales of fools who tried. In the north, banners rose at Asha's word, but snow-clogged passes. Travel slowed to a crawl. Winterfell woke each dawn to pale light reflecting off ice-rimmed battlements and wondered if dragonfire could melt snow. Far to the east, Daenerys Stormborn sailed toward Dragonstone, 3 dragons at her heels. When word reached her fleet of a hatchling in the west, birthed of salt and shadow, her blood stirred. Mother's jealousy, queen's fury. She whispered to Drogon that he might soon taste the breath of his own kind. Drogon answered with a growl deep enough to rattle chains. None understood that Euron's dragon was not of fire alone. It was forged of storm, lightning and sinew, salt and blood, wildfire blazing where heart should be. A creature born of drowned god and dead empire, carrying in its cry both song of waves and scream of worlds ending. In the depths of winter's longest night, Tempest reached its first true growth. Wingspan 50 feet, breath that could boil stone. Euron flew north along the coast, scouting, while below him longships hugged foam-fringed sea roads. Fires burned in lonely watchtowers, but no horns sounded. Fear had choked them silent. He thought then of the wall, ice and old spells, guardians of mankind. What would ice do against green flame? Would the mammoths and dead things behind it bow? Might he burn even the others, melt the wall, and unleash winter southward to weaken the realm before he conquered it whole? The thought pleased him, salt and snow dancing. Tempest shrieked, sensing his hunger. Markdown, diamond suit, yet fire feeds on itself and leaves only ash. By spring's thaw, islands he had once called home lay bare. Forests felled to feed braziers, goats bled to sate Tempest's furnace heart. Men slain in distant wars never returning. The isles starved. Mothers salted broth with tears. Children sucked barnacle for what brine they could. Iron Price had bankrupted itself. Asha returned with a northern fleet under banners of the direwolf and flayed man. Her ships were fewer, but her holds brimmed with grain, promised by Sansa Stark for safe harbor in Winterfell. She found Pike half in ruin, the great tower scorched where Tempest's takeoffs rattled stone. The dragon itself coiled on a cliff, eyes dull. Hunger, perhaps, or sickness no maester knew. Dragons could outgrow their own food chains. Tempest needed ever more meat, ever more fire, and the Isles could give neither. Euron greeted Asha on the causeway, wearing a cloak woven of scales shed from Tempest's first molt. "Come to kneel?" he asked. "I come to feed our people," she said, voice hard as cliffstone. "You burned our fields. You bled our herds. The old way is sacrifice. Aye, but never suicide."
Euron's smile faltered.
"All thrones are built on bones." "Then leave ours intact," she said. "Go carve your throne in the mainland. Break the reach again, but spare what's left here." Behind her, Northmen watched, hands on axes. Snow clung to their cloaks. They smelled of pine and cold iron, not cowed by dragons, for they had winter's own terrors to fear and respected those more. Euron weighed them, glittering. Far above, Tempest lifted its head, nostrils flaring as if scenting prey. It launched without warning, wings sending boulders tumbling. Snow swirled in sudden updraft. Northmen cowered, though none fled. They held ground like stones. Tempest banked, descending toward the cliff road laden with villagers dragging carts of grain. Hunger guided it more than malice. Euron shouted, but the dragon's mind rang with furnace thunder, hollow, too loud to hear anything else. Its jaws opened, fire gouting green. Grain burst into flame. Carts shattered. Men and women became silhouettes of ash caught mid-stride. Asha screamed. Northmen loosed spears pointless as straws. Flames caught a longship at anchor. Tarred ropes snapped and sails roared alight. Atop the cliff, Euron felt the dragon's rage echo in his bones. He mounted a stair, ignoring heat that blistered stone, ignoring Asha's calls. He leapt from tower to dragon's saddleless back, fingers finding crevices in scale. Tempest bucked, but he clung as always. Enough! He hissed into the torrent of wind. The dragon's reply was a lurch upward that nearly tore him free. It climbed through clouds smeared crimson by firelight. Euron's lungs burned. Frost rhymed his lashes. He pounded fist on scale, but the beast flew on, blind to all but hunger. When it dove, Euron thought it meant to finish the village. Instead, Tempest turned seaward, jaws yawning as if to drink the horizon. But no flame came. A deep shudder rippled from skull to tail. The fire that had once roared was now a rattle. Scales dulled. Membranes tore in the slipstream. Euron felt warmth seep through cracks beneath him, heat bleeding away. Tempest was dying. Dragons, Maesters wrote, required balance. Wind to sharpen wings, stone to hone claws, sky to feed hearts. But they were also magic, and magic fed on life. Depleted beyond courts of blood and ash, it withered. The Isles had no more to give. Tempest beat wings once, twice, in vain. It faltered, lost lift, spiraled downward. Euron clung, teeth bared against shrieking wind. Sea rushed up black and unforgiving. For a heartbeat he thought of the drowned god, of Euron submerged in endless dark, and wondered if, after all, he would know the god's halls. Then water engulfed dragon and rider alike. The impact split Tempest's chest. Green fire belched, then extinguished, snuffed by tons of cold brine. Scales cracked, heat tried to rebirth itself, failed. Euron's world became icy pressure, salt churning, silence deeper than night. Brine rushed into his lungs. Somewhere above, moonlight wavered like a coin dropping through black ink. He let go. When dawn broke, wreckage of driftwood and ash clotted the bay. Asha found no corpse on the shore, only shards of scale dull and flaking, and an eye patch washed up like a spent shell. Some said Euron walked back into the sea, became part of the drowned chorus. Others swore they saw a lone ship far west, sailing into sunset, white-sailed, silent, crewed by ghosts. Tempest's carcass sank into deeps where light dies. There, heat lingered like a sleeping ember, silent, waiting for currents to bear it somewhere new. In darkness it rested, and in rest it dreamed, not of storms nor stone, but of an echo of heartbeat within a greater shell. World egg, still unbroken. Markdown, diamond suit. Above, the Iron Islands nursed wounds. Asha rebuilt villages, sowed rye in soil salted by ash. Northmen sailed home, telling tales of a dragon slain by hunger and folly. The realm exhaled, thinking the storm spent. But children born 9 months after that shortest night carried in their eyes flecks of wildfire green. They spoke to gulls before they spoke to mothers, and gulls answered. When they cried, the sea stirred, and deep beneath, in trenches older than maps, something small and scarlet drifted toward a vent that bled warmth enough to hatch dreams. In a dark vaster than sky, another shell began to crack. The tale remains far from its final tempest. Foam hissed around the prow of the Black Allegiance as it pushed through a dawn sea the color of forged copper. At the rail stood Asha Greyjoy, hair unbound and stiff with salt, eyes fixed on a horizon that had not yet decided whether to bless the Iron Islands with wind or starve them in dead calm. The longship answered each slow swell with a groan, her hull half empty of provisions since the flames that roared from Tempest's throat had turned barns to charcoal. Behind Asha, Northmen shuffled, soldiers sworn to Winterfell yet uneasy upon a deck that flexed beneath them like a living thing. They murmured of krakens and ghosts and the drowned dead calling from below, but Asha offered no comfort. Her mind, like the sea, housed louder voices. She remembered the crunch of grain popping under dragonfire, smell of bread burned black before it ever had the chance to bake. She remembered children clutching sacks of rye that became torches in their hands. And above it all, she had seen her brother, arm raised in a gesture meant perhaps to calm the beast, perhaps to spur it on. The wind had whipped his cloak of shed scales. The beast's wings had split cloud and sunlight in equal measure. Then the dragon had faltered, had plunged, and Asha had heard a sound she would never forget. Stone breaking beneath water, a scream that was not beast and not man but both entangled until they tore each other apart. For 3 days she'd searched debris-strewn coves. She had found twisted ribs of hull, barrels puckered by heat, cinders soft as soot. No body.
No dragon bone.
Only that damned rag of leather, once an eye patch, washed in with tangles of kelp. Theon said it was enough proof. Euron was drowned and the drowned god would choke on him, but proof felt thin as spider silk in a gale. Asha could still feel her brother's laughter under her skin, and she had learned young that laughter was the last thing Euron would surrender. The Black Allegiance angled toward Great Wyke, where fishers claimed the cliffs still glimmered green at night, as though wildfire coals slumbered in honeycombed stone. She aimed to deliver grain, seed, and simple iron tools. Peace offerings, she thought bitterly, from wolves to krakens. Peace tasted like ashes, but famine tasted worse. She sensed rather than saw the first gull wheel above. Its shrill cry broke the hush that lay on deck. One Northman muttered the gull's wings looked wrong, as though one feather in each primed row lay folded bronze and shimmered like glass. Asha peered upward just in time to see the bird veer off, dipping over the wake, headed for land. There, jutting past a fist of storm cloud, stood cliffs whose snow-patched faces caught one sunlight. Lanterns hung along ridges where no lantern had reason to be. Pinpricks, faint in growing day, yet host to a flicker that was not lamplight. Asha's breath caught. The pinpricks flared green, vanished, flared again. Fires no goatherd would dare keep, not with grain so dear. She scanned sky and sea, half expecting the sound of leathery wings. Nothing, only gulls and the hush of rigging. The longship grounded at a pebble beach. Northmen leapt to drag her keel past Titteline while sailors slung planks across gunwales. Grain sacks passed hand to hand, a rope of human resolve linking deck to shore. Asha supervised until the last sack thudded onto gravel. Children waited there, thin arms, thinner faces. They huddled round the grain like dogs round a carcass, but did not yet break ranks. Not while strangers watched. From the cliff path descended 2 shapes armored in patched leathers. Their shields bore no kraken sigil, instead a crude circle scratched to look like an eye. One shape, a woman, hailed in a voice hoarse from salt. "Lady Asha," she rasped, "your grain buys our silence, I?" Asha stepped forward, hand resting on her belt dagger. "Grain buys life. You think silence matters now, when every raven on the ridge cause of dragons and drowned kings." The second guard laughed, a bark that ended in cough. "Silence kept you alive when Euron flew. We lit no fires, rang no bells. The beast turned south and left us whole." Asha glanced again at the distant cliff lights. "I saw fires last night." "Aye," said the woman. "Small fires, deep cracks. Harlaw men digging for clams swear the rock grows warm after dusk. They reckon wildfire seeped from Tempest's bones when he crashed." The coffer spat. "They reckon too much." He fixed Asha with rheumy eyes. "Word is you'll sail again. Word is you mean to kneel to wolves and the Dragon Queen both." "There'll be no kneel," Asha answered. Bend or break, aye, but not kneel. Euron's storm near broke us and left nothing to trade but fear. Fear buys short, eats quick. I'll buy longer, he grunted, unimpressed. Prices are higher than grain. King Smoot chooses kings. You'll summon another? When islands stand strong enough to weather one, she said. The guard strode past her, dragging grain toward a cave mouth where more children waited. Their eyes glinted in dimness. One girl, no older than 7, touched a sack as though it might vanish in smoke. The woman ruffled the girl's hair, murmured something, and vanished inside. Asha turned to Theon, who had hung back clutching a staff. He flinched at sudden gull shriek overhead, then steadied. Something wrong? He asked. Everything, Asha muttered. The islands stink of secrets. Euron's dead, yet his shadow still feeds. Theon's gaze drifted seaward. He isn't done. Greyjoys never bury deep. We rot under the tides, then float. He forced a smile that was mostly memory. Let's float somewhere else. You promised me snow that didn't taste of salt. I promised nothing, Asha said, but softer. Her eyes lingered on water-lapping grain sacks, cold tongues tasting charity twice salted. Once by tears, once by blood. Hundreds of leagues south, in the sheltered coves beneath Dragonstone's black cliffs, ships of every temper bobbed at anchor. Swan-proud Lyseni whalers, wide-belly Carthene barges, hard-keeled northern cogs. Above them, carved gargoyles wept rainwater onto stone quays built when Valyrians still scribbled fortunes in blood. It was midday, yet torches guttered in sconces. Sky hung heavy with bruised cloud. Miners had been blasting tunnels for stores. Their hammerings echoed like distant drums. In the courtyard, drovers urged goats toward iron cages already rank with old kill. The goats sensed predators unseen. They balked, bleated, kicked, until a dragon-tail silhouette passed across clouds, and they fell silent in that animal way, suggesting they understood nothing, yet understood everything. Daenerys Targaryen watched from a storm-blasted parapet, arms folded against a wind that tasted not of smoke but of rust peeling off old hinges. Winds had shifted since leaving Meereen. They smelled of winter, though summer still clung to Southron roads. Huddled beneath her cloak, she felt her dragons circling overhead, 1, 2, 3 shadows rippling across sea. Drogon's wing beats thundered. Rhaegal shrieked. Viserion hummed like a harp string stretched to snapping. They felt uneasy, as she herself did, ever since word reached them of the western hatchling's fall. You pity the creature, Tyrion observed, stepping beside her with a goblet sloshing red. Odd, given it devoured half the reach. I pity a world that let itself believe a lone dragon's death ends fire, Dany replied. Every skull in that tower once roared. Their silence did not save the 7 kingdoms from suffering. Tyrion sipped. A lion's roar echoes after its throat is cut. My queen. Echoes frighten longer than sound. She shivered, though not from cold. Echoes and shadows. They travel quicker than ravens. The Iron Islands saw one dragon fall and now whisper of another stirring beneath waves. Children there are born with wildfire in their eyes. Small folk tell stories to mend what truths shatter, Tyrion said. But there's talk even among maesters of dead tempest, and of strange lights in the sunset sea, green, pulsing, like a heart beating in water. Magic moves like tide, she said. It recedes, leaves us stranded, then returns twice as fierce. I rode the wave first. Others will ride after. He eyed Drogon banking low in a gust. Best to surf before we drown. She touched the parapet's wet stone, feeling pores of rock exhale chill. Send ravens to Winterfell. Tell them Asha Greyjoy sails north with grain. Offer escort. Wolves and krakens share common seas in winter. Tyrion arched brow. You mean to befriend Ironborn? They're raiders, reavers, pirates. Their songs praise drowning. They know the price of fire, she said. Loss teaches. Perhaps they'll teach me what price my dragons must pay to keep their hearts beating. She turned from parapet, cloak whipping. And recall our own price. Fire burns gold quickly. Tyrion followed. muttering half to himself. Easier to weigh debts when coin isn't melting. In a half-sealed chamber below the stone drum, maesters and smiths toiled around vast scorpions, iron beasts with sinew-wire guts. Bolts 2 yards long lay stacked, tips forged of black steel dredged from Volantis. They labored by lamplight, muttering unit weights, crank tensions. When Daenerys passed, they bowed awkwardly, hammers still moving. None had yet dared test a bolt against her dragons. She could smell their fear thick as coal smoke behind bowed heads. In her solar she found Missandei at a clutter of scrolls, ship manifests, grain tallies, lists of nobles who might bend knee for promise of southern harvests. Missandei's eyes glimmered fatigue, but her voice stayed sure. Ravens confirm Lord Glover has left Deepwood Motte for Winterfell. He escorts Lady Asha under white flag. Daenerys unpinned her cloak. Tell the kitchens to pack salted cod and dried peppers. Dragon riders travel lean. Missandei paused. You ride north. I fly, Dany said. But yes, Asha's escort should be sufficient. I carry more than escort. A treaty written in flame, stamped with claw. The North must see the dragons with their own eyes, else they'll imagine only Euron's shadow. She closed her hand before Missandei's startled gaze. Fear thrives in absence. Presence kills or tames it. Missandei lowered gaze. As you will, your grace. Daenerys found silence again on the parapet at dusk. Drogon settled behind her like a living mountain, talons grinding stone to dust. Fire simmered in his throat. Heat licked her back, welcome as summer's first dawn. She pressed her cheek to his scales. Not alone, she whispered. Drogon rumbled answer. They shared one thought. West wind carried strange scents, salt, rot, echo of green flame. He tasted it through nostrils flaring, and his wings shivered uneasy. She tasted it on the back of her tongue. Promise of battle spiced with grief. Night jars called over pike when the tide turned, but there was no moon to bless them. Sky had locked itself behind ragged veils. Torchlight flickered along half-collapsed battlements. In a shadowed archway, a boy named Darren Saltlord knelt before a trough of seawater. His wrists bore scars from a season aboard Silence's sister ship, where Euron had preached by whip and cutlass. Darren's hands trembled as he dipped a shard of scale. Tempest scale, chipped from a cliff, into the trough. The shard hissed, water steaming. Green sparks danced atop the surface, then died. Darren's breath came fast. He thought of whispers traded in fish markets. That shards bled power, that whoever gathered enough might kindle a new flame capable of forging wings. He thought of his mother's gaunt face and the empty net hanging behind their hut. Power bought supper, or at least someone's fear enough to share supper. He plunged the shard deeper. Behind him footsteps scraped. He flinched, but a voice said gently, "Easy, lad." He turned to find the priestess Merona Waters, bastard of Driftmark, robes ghost pale in torchlight. She had taken Aaron's place after his disappearance, though the old ways scorned women in the cloth. Her hair, gray though she was younger than Asha, fell loose, dripping seawater as though she'd emerged from baptism. Eyes black as wet shale studied the trough. "It calls to you," she smiled, no warmth. "Calls to many," Darren swallowed. "It's evil. It is need," she corrected. "Need knows no virtue. Each scale carries memory of flight. Dragons forget nothing, they dream in iron and flame. Scales remember being one skin. They hunger to knit together again." She reached, plucked the shard. Steam clung to her fingers, yet she did not drop it. There are men who'd give tongues, eyes, sons to possess a chest full. Enough scales, enough spellwork. Perhaps another dragon stirs. Darren's eyes widened. Tempest is dead. Merona's gaze lifted to distant surf beating against pylons. The drowned god and the red god play stones together on boards we moor. Tals cannot see. One piece lost often returns wearing a new face. Darren shivered despite warmth of steam wreathing their hands. Merona slipped the shard into a pouch at her girdle. "Come," she said. "The hunger you feel, I feel too." Better we share it than let some crows I feed alone. She led him through twisting corridors left rubble-choked when Euron's dragon launched from towers too narrow for its wings. They emerged onto a ledge overlooking the sea. There, half-shadowed by broken merlons, 5 others waited. A makeshift altar of driftwood and rusted anchor bolts smoldered at their center. On it lay shards, black, teal, glassy red. The shards pulsed green where firelight touched them. Merona raised her arms. The wind carried brine thick as tar. "We gather scales to weigh hearts," she intoned. "To weigh the Iron Island's worth. Feed magic until magic chooses vessel." The others murmured assent. Darren felt heat on his face, heat of scale memory, of hunger. He knelt, adding his tremor to the hum building in air. For a moment ledge, sea, and sky blurred, became a single vast lung inhaling. Below, unnoticed, surf retreated farther than low tide should allow. Rocks once dredged only by storm now gaped bare. A fissure groaned, splitting seabed. From it a bubble of warmth surfaced, swirling red and green, and with it came a fragment of shell no larger than a man's heart but shaped unmistakably curved, rimmed in molten glass. It bobbed once, twice, then tide rushed in, hiding it again. Euron dreamed of bells, not the cathedral bronze that told victory in old Volantis, nor the cracked bronze of Karth that warlocks used to summon illusions. These bells were bone-white and hollow, suspended in waters blacker than night. They clanged not with clapper but with passing of fins or coils or something older brushing by. Each toll shook his ribs inside out. He awoke to darkness smelling of myrrh and tar. He lay on a broad cedar couch in a cabin thick with humid air. Sulfur crystals glowed from sconces, pale as drowned moonlight. A woman sat at the foot of the couch grinding leaf into paste. Her hands moved sinuous, veiled in brass rings. His mouth tasted of iron. "Drink," she said, offering a cup. Her tongue carried an accent he placed east of Ashai, west of night. He drank. Liquid blistered down his throat, left numbness in its wake. She watched until color returned to his lips. "The trader's wife hauled you from sea 3 days past. You clung to a mast, one eye open. Always one," he rasped. His voice sounded far away, like echoes thrown into canyons. "Where am I?" "Tong of the basilisks," she said. "Island of bad water and worse men." "Perfect," he croaked. He tried to sit. Pain danced beneath ribs like hooked fish. He laughed thinly. "The dragon." "Shards sank," she said.
No corpse floated.
"Even better." He forced breath deep. Fire still lived behind sternum, though faint. He recalled the impact. Water kissing flame, a scream of metal and magic. Death had come, then fled. He'd surfaced clinging to scale plates still hot enough to blister skin. Laughed, coughed brine, drifted until night bled into nightmare into this. He touched his chest. Just below sternum skin had puckered into starburst scar, raised ridges shaped like scaled wings. He pressed, felt heat, faint but pulsing. A second heartbeat. He grinned. "Fortune favors crows." The woman frowned. "Fortune favors no one on Basilisk Isles. You owe passage." "I pay gold doubloons," he said. "Or secrets worth more." Her gaze narrowed. "Secrets don't buy rice." "No," he agreed, "but they feed hungers older than rice." He swung legs over couch edge. The cabin tilted, a ship at anchor. Outside, gulls squawked like rusted hinges. He steadied himself on an ivory cane he did not recall owning. "Tell your captain his passenger intends to buy more than passage. He intends to buy doom." She stared, unsure if he jested. He smiled wider, and the smile convinced. That night, Euron limped onto deck where lanterns hung low. The sea around the tong shimmered with plankton glow, painting hulls sickly green. Beyond reef, waves pulsed red beneath fresh-risen blood moon. He inhaled. The second heartbeat inside him quickened, responding. He closed his good eye and listened past wind, past surf, past the rasp of sailors muttering prayer. He heard bells again, bells of bone rocking in black water. They clanged in pattern, beckoning. With each clang, the heartbeat within his scar answered. He knew then, shards called to shards, shells to shells. Tempest's pieces yearned to gather, and some pieces already had. He laughed, arms wide to wind. The deckhands froze. Few things more unsettling than a half-drowned man laughing at empty horizon. Euron's laughter died to whisper. "Find me every smuggler who trades in warlock relics," he told the night. "Find me priests who claim they speak to drowned gods." He touched the starburst scar. "And find me black blood still warm." The trader's wife's captain, a squat Valentine named Emerose, protested next dawn when Euron demanded a course west, ignoring holds full of spice bound for Cohor. Euron sliced Emerose's ear off with a dagger that flashed moonlight though sun already climbed. Then Emerose agreed basilisks were dull this season. They sailed into storms no sane mariner faced. Between waves high as towers, Euron stood at prow barefoot, letting lightning paint his scars silver. He whispered to winds in tongues stolen from Karth warlocks, coaxing them true northwest. 3 men went mad after hearing words. One flung himself overboard, another clawed eyes, the third stuffed rotten cork in ears and sang child songs. Euron spared them. Madness was currency in seas none dared chart. He caught glimpses sometimes, under crests of waves, shafts of sun-piercing swirl, of shapes gliding far below. Not leviathans, not whales. Something slender, scaled, leaving contrails of green spark. Too quick, gone before thought formed. Each time scar hot, bells clanged faint. On the 16th day, the trader's wife found a wreck drifting. Ribbed timbers charred black, cargo spilled, casks of arbor wine bobbing like bloody fruit. Among debris floated a box carved from weirwood. Glyphs decorated its lid, stylized dragon eye above crossed kraken tentacles. Sailors feared to touch it. Euron dove and hauled it free. In his cabin he pried lid with dagger. Inside lay shards, 13 of them, largest size of his palm, others slivers. Each throbbed light dull green. Heat rose and his scar thrummed answer. He placed shards around him in a circle. They pulsed syncopated until his blood dripped between, blade nicking finger by accident or fate. Blood connected shards, pulses matched. Heat filled cabin, bending air.
Euron breed het smoke.
Images flashed. Cliffs of great white lit by secret bonfires. A woman priestess holding shard aloft. Deep trench where vents bled warmth. An unbroken shell nestled against rock glowing with red veins. He gasped. The shell was bigger than Tempest's egg had been twice, thrice. It pulsed slower, deeper, as though ancient lungs drew titanic breath. Around it, scales drifted like iron snow pulled by unseen tide. He laughed until Captain Pounded Door worried storm had cracked keel. He let Captain in, showed nothing but weirwood empty and extinguished glimmer. "Set course Iron Islands," he said. "I have home to burn anew." Emerose tried to refuse. Euron peeled away bandages from starburst scar. Heat radiated, painful even to stand near. Emerose agreed. Winterfell's courtyards rang with hammer on ice as Asha's convoy passed under portcullis. Snow lay in pocks across battlements. By southern measure, winter had not yet begun, but here breath already frosted midward. The direwolf banners snapped overhead, their fabric stiff. A faint scent of pine smoke and tallow candles surprised Asha. Memories of child winters spent trading salted cod at White Harbor before Balan's wars. Sansa Stark met her with guard retinue. She wore white furs over gray velvet. Hair the hue of autumn maple spilled across shoulders. Snowflakes dotted lashes but melted before weighing them. She greeted Asha as one might greet a neighbor arriving late but welcome. Wordless nod, quick clasp of hands. Theon stood behind Asha, half hidden. Sansa's eyes found him and softened, though they both flinched at memory. He managed a crooked bow. She drew him forward, pressed her forehead to his. In that gesture Asha saw more forgiveness than she believed possible between wolves and krakens. They repaired to hall where fires roared. Bran sat in carved weirwood chair near hearth, eyes distant. Asha remembered tales of him seeing more than men ought. His gaze flicked to her, then beyond, as if she were semi-transparent. Sea stirs, he murmured. Sansa hushed him, warmth in voice, but Bran's mouth moved still, words no ear caught fully. Jon Snow arrived 2 days after, leading southward patrol. He entered hall dusted with frost, cloak heavy. He greeted Asha with terse courtesy. She noted his eyes never quite rested, as though searching for something behind yet to leap. Rumor said he'd died once, come back. She believed rumor. Men with death shadows in gaze rarely lied long. Over roasted venison Asha laid cases. Famine on islands, search for alliance. Sansa countered with need for ships if war with Cersei lingered. Jon argued dragons changed ledger. At mention, Bran's head jerked. One dragon lost, he said. Another gestating. Fire swims where ice sank. Silence followed. The boy sees things, Asha said. He sees threads, Jon corrected. Whether thread becomes rope depends. Euron's dead, Theon blurted, perhaps to convince himself. No more dragons. Dead things in water sometimes swim, Bran answered softly. Asha felt chill deeper than snow. That night she walked parapets, breath pluming. Northern lights flickered green far off, rare this south. She stared until patterns seemed familiar, lines crossing, pulsing, forming a sigil. I surrounded by tendrils, edges aflame. She shook head, looked away. Lights still danced when eyes closed. Great Wyke's seaward cliffs groaned under winter storms. Fishermen, nets empty, blamed ghosts of slaughtered goats. Atop the cliff Merona Water's altar had grown. Shards fused with driftwood, glowing veins pulsed nightly. She and her followers bent there, chanting words borrowed from old tongue of Valyria twisted by salt harshness. Each night shards summoned others. Children found them, men found them, tide delivered. The pile grew. One dawn thunder shook cliffs though sky clear. Altar cracked. Shards folded inward, melding. Light bled from center, soft first, then glaring emerald. Merona wept, tears scalding cheeks. She felt something hatch but saw no shell break. The crack widened. A sound like inhale of giant lung rushed heating air. Sand lifted in swirling column. Followers cried out. Darren clutched Merona's sleeve. She held fast as column spun out across sea. Where it struck water, a circle hissed, swirling deeper than keel. From that circle shapes rose scales, bones, half-fused shells, carried by spiral updraft. They spun into altar core, vanished. Wind died, altar gone, replaced by whole smoldering green at edges. From hole came silence so complete ears rang. Then something scraped stone within. Talon on cliff face, slow, deliberate. Followers fled. Only Merona and Darren remained frozen. A head surfaced, long, spear-shaped, armored in black scales shot through with silver lines like filigree. Eyes burned twin lanterns green. It opened mouth. Steam poured, not flame, steam thick as fog. Merona smelled brine and copper, felt gust push hair horizontal. The creature hauled further. Front limbs ending in broad webbed talons. Wings vestigial folds slick with salt. It was dragon and not, forged for water as much as sky. Scales bore marks of fusion. Ridges welded together by heat once unimaginable. The head swiveled to Merona. In its gaze lay question. Master? She could not answer. From far off horns sounded. Longship horns warning of sail shapes on horizon. Merona turned. Black sails trimmed red rose from sea, row after row, each bearing a sigil of Euron. At their van, on prow of silence rebuilt and meaner, stood Euron Greyjoy, arms wide as if crucified upon storm. Wind whipped cloak of scales. His voice knifed across surf. My child, the amphidrake, as tongues later named it, snapped wings, spraying seawater in arc. It leapt from hole, glided, smacked tail thrice across waves, built speed.
Euron Loghead.
On Silence's foredeck, he held twisted horn bound in red gold. He raised it, blue. Sound breached sky, a groan deep as earth's marrow. The drake banked, eyes rolling white. It let out answering bellow, pitched lower than tempests but stronger, vibrating sternum against lungs. Euron leapt over gunwale, landed astride saddle, rig lashed between wing roots. Scales hissed under his weight. Scar on chest flared green. He pressed bare palm. Amphidrache stilled. Sailors gaped, witnessing Crow merry storm again. He looked once toward Cliff. Merona met gaze. His smile, terrible, grateful, promised reward greater than fear. She nodded despite quaking knees. Euron twisted reins. Amphidrache rose, wings beating spray into mist. It gained height, arcing over silence. Sailors cheered. Reavers in other ships thumped chests. The beast shrieked. Wingtips left ripples in air. They turned east toward Pike, toward mainland beyond. Night fell behind them. Dawn waited ahead bloody. At Winterfell ravens arrived together. Twin identical scrolls stamped with eye sigil. One delivered to Asha, one to Sansa. Both bore same message scrawled in storm-crooked hand. Storms return by your leave or by your blood. Bend knee at Pike before next moon, and I shall spare hearth and harvest. Refuse and taste salt fire. Euron, king of tide and sky reborn. Jon's jaw clenched reading. Bran whispered, "He wears two shadows now." Asha felt rage heavy where hope once perched. "He threatens famine to famine's cure." She slammed fist on table. "Will not bend. Isles themselves will rebel." Bran's gaze clouded. Isles divided, half starve, half drown. Only fire unites them. He offers fire. Sansa paced. "We need council of dragons." Her voice made Jon look up. "Daenerys flies already," Jon said. "But even 3 dragons may fail when sea gives birth to monster half fish, half flame." A horn sounded atop east wall. Rider approaching. Jon hurried to gate. In snow beyond waited a hooded figure astride shaggy Garen. Hood thrown back revealed Melisandre's red hair clinging damp. Eyes glowed ember in gloom. "Long night shorter," she said, "but storms come quick. Fire needs walls of ice and salt alike." Jon sighed. "You sense new fires." "I sense old fires wearing new scales," she answered. "One hand wields them, one scar feeds them. But wounds may close if needle finds right vein." Asha joined them. Melisandre's gaze lingered on her. "Salt sister holds key. Blood of kraken, blood of storm, blood of dragon spilled once, will spill thrice. Seal wound with sister's hand, or realm weeps green tears." Asha frowned. She had bled once at Euron's command, when he'd cut her cheek to mark her shame. She touched faded scar. "Seal how?" Melisandre offered nothing but slight sad smile. Snow drifted between them like small white insects. "Fire shows shapes," she said. "Choose which burn." That night gods would heart-tree bled sap bright red against snow. Bran sat beneath limbs, eyes blank, mouth whispering wave patterns. Asha watched from distance until she swore she heard gulls crying, though none could survive winter this stark. She tasted salt on wind. The next morn Daenerys arrived. Dragons broke low clouds like hammers through glass. They circled Winterfell thrice, settling between broken towers. Snow hissed off Drogon's scales, turning to steam. Regal and Viserion folded wings, eyes scanning. Northerners trembled but did not run. Memory of undead flight still raw. In hall Daenerys laid palms on map carved from weirwood. "Euron breeds storm again," she said. "We break storm before it lands." Jon studied pins. "He rises from sea. We must fight above water." Dany nodded. "Dragons can..." She paused. Drogon outside growled thunder. "Amphidrache may dive beneath surface where my dragons cannot. War at water's skin." Tyrion offered. "Chain of scorpions across Moat Cailin could hinder flight inland. Bait him north, drown him in nets and ice." "He'll not bite bait without scent of blood," Asha said. "We give him blood." Eyes turned. She felt weight. "My blood," she clarified. "Greyjoy blood draws kraken." Tyrion's brows rose. "Risky bait. Risk suits Ironborn," she said. "I will sail to Banefort coast, display banners of truce. When he comes, dragons strike from clouds, scorpions from hidden cliffs." Dany weighed. We risk losing you, and if he kills Dragon's first volley? Asha shrugged. Lose all if he grows stronger. Owls cannot starve twice. Jon spoke. I'll stand with her. Wolf tooth matched to Kraken lure. Dany's jaw tightened. Then I fly above shadows. Bran whispered from seat. Storm chooses path through cracks, not walls. Leave cracks and it will come. Melisandre's gaze found hearth where flames fluttered blue, then green for half-breath before yellow again. Let him taste hint of victory. Blood sweeter when prey thinks salt leads to milk. Banefort cliffs jutted over frothing surf, gulls screaming though storm loomed. Asha's longship, Black Allegiance, anchored in small cove hidden by spurs. Jon stood on outcrop, snow swirling, black cloak snapping. Northern archers hid among pines above, Scorpion crews silent behind canvas screens. Further back, Tyrion oversaw cauldrons of pitch strapped to levers ready to pour. Dragons unseen above clouds. They'd taken perch on mountain ridge, snow melting in wide swath. Asha raised banner. Kraken sigil with slash red across eye, sign of parley. It fluttered in bitter gust. She felt stomach coil. Hours passed. Tide ebbed. Beach glistened black. Dusk painted sea bruised purple. Still nothing. Then horn sounded faint on wind. Not theirs. Lower, deeper, same horn Euron used at Great White. Ocean surface rippled outward like cloth shook free of crumbs. Something cut wave. Dorsal ridge lined in crest of argent plates. Water shoaled behind rising shape. Wake carried smell of sulfur. The amphidrake breached midway between Asha's ship and headland. Wings unfurled. Span great as Drogon's. Drops of seawater fell sizzling into surf. Upon its back Euron stood, feet planted on fused saddle. Moonlight broke clouds and silvered his grin. Starburst scar glowed green through rent jerkin. He raised horn again but did not blow. Instead he cupped hands to mouth. Sister, sound carried uncanny clarity. Brought our father's chair for you. Sit and watch kingdoms burn. Asha trembled, not from cold. She stepped onto bulwark. I'll starve. You feed storm, not children. Euron shrugged. Broad show. Children feed dragons. Dragons feed goats. Jon motioned behind. Archers knocked. Asha lifted hand, stilling them. Come ashore, she called. Parley. He laughed. Tilt of head like crow pecking corpse. Parley? Your wolf hides claws in pine. I smell pitch, iron, and treachery. Asha's mouth went dry. Plan cracked. Cracks let storm choose path. She forced voice steady. You fear pitch and treachery? This beast of yours shriveled once from hunger. How feeds he now? More goats? Or broken oaths? Euron's eyes narrowed. Glow in scar pulsed. Amphidrake bellowed, wings thudding. Waves surged, smashing prow of Black Allegiance. Sailors scrambled. Jon signaled Scorpion's unv. Ild bolts clicked. Tyrion shouted release. Pitch cascaded down chutes, catching torches midfall, igniting black tongues. Amphidrake sprang, spray and flame. Bolts loosed. Some clanged harmless on water-slick scales. One found wing membrane near joint. Beast screeched, but climb continued. Pitch napalm splashed across chest. Flames raced scale seams, turned green where scar energy met black fire. Beast roared, pain or ecstasy unknown. Dragons answered. Sky ripped open. Drogon dove in silent arrow, regal on right, Viserion left. Flames of orange and gold streamed throats. Amphidrake twisted midair, water shedding like cloak, then spat back stream not flame but scalding vapor laced with shards of glassy teeth. Viserion banked, vapor clipped wing. Shriek echoed cliffs. On ridge Tyrion swore. He'd planned for dragon versus ground, not drake in air and water both. Drogon collided with Amphidrake. Two titans locked, spiral plummeting toward sea. Steam exploded where they hit surf. Tail of Amphidrake coiled round Drogon's neck. Drogon bit, tore chunk, green ichor gushed. Amphidrake's jaws locked on Drogon's forelimb, teeth crunching bone. Battle spun them half submerged. Waves frothed red-green. Euron clung saddle, laughing even as claws raked near. He pressed horn to lips, blew. Sound rolled across water, shattering ice along shoreline. Asha felt knees tremble. Amphidrake heaved, flipping Drogon beneath. Sea closed above black wings. Regal swooped, talons ripping at Drake's exposed back. Euron swung blade upward, catching Regal's talon. Steel sparked on scale, blood hissed. Jon yelled for Scorpion's reload. Bolts fired again, few finding marks. One struck Euron's thigh, he ripped it free, tossed. Blade slashed tether. Scorpion line snapped, sending crew tumbling. On cliff, Bran watched through direwolf eyes warged into unseen raven hovering. He saw battle lines of heat and cold, of light and shadow. He whispered, "Scar is wound into world. Cut Scar deeper to bleed creature." He reached into Raven, then into Drogon, brush of mind to mind. Drogon's fury sharpened. He ceased thrashing, flexed wings, dove deeper, dragging Drake underwater. Euron's laughter cut off as water closed. His horn lost, bubbles swirled. Regal circled above, waiting. Underwater darkness, Drogon loosed jet of flame. Extinguished instantly, but heat flash-boiled bubble around jaws. Amphidrake writhed. Vapor inside throat ruptured, venting gouts of steam from nostrils. Scar on Euron's chest pulsed, draining color from his face. He punched Amphidrake's neck, urging surface. It rose, but Drogon clung like anchor. Above, Viserion recovered, swooped with roar, blanketing patch of sea in ice-steamed fire. Concoction of frost flame he'd learned in long winter beyond wall. Steam and ice met, hissing shield around combatants. Inside, Drogon sensed command, Bran weaving, Daenerys guiding. He released Amphidrake, angled away. Regal descended opposite flank, talons hooking damaged wing. Amphidrake surfaced, gasping mist. One wing shredded. It strained to rise, but weight dragged. Asha saw opening. She grabbed boarding axe, sprinted along bulwark, leapt into longboat lowered minutes before. Crew rowed furiously toward flailing dragon mass. Jon shouted but followed, sword longclaw gleaming. Near melee, Euron spotted them. He stood, drenched, hair plastered. "Sister loves me after all," he crooned, voice hoarse. Amphidrake turned head, jaws opening, but flame sputtered. Only green drool fell sizzling. Longboat crashed against scaly flank. Asha jumped, planted axe into plate, climbed. Jon followed. Heat roiled. Stench of kelp and blood thick. Up slope of wing base they scrambled until Euron barred path. He staggered, wound bleeding thigh, but grin unwavering. "Thought to clip my wings?" He brandished curved sword forged of shell metal.
Come quis Stormfather.
Asha swung first. Blades clanged. Jon lanced from right. Euron parried, lashed out, nicking Jon's cheek. Amphidrake pitched. Waves hammered hull of black allegiance, fracturing lee rail. Scorpion bolts whizzed above like angry sparrows. Euron kicked Jon backward, pivoted on good leg, locked blades with Asha. "Eye patch left for you," he hissed. "Wear family pride." She spat, drove axe haft into his gut. He reeled, laughter cut short.
Jon surged, trust longclaf. Euron twisted. Sverd gratset starburst scar.
Contact sprayed sparks green. Euron howled, stumbled, lost footing, slid toward water. Asha caught his sleeve. He dangled over churning sea. For Heartbeat's sister and brother locked gazes. Hers stormed by grief, his ablaze with mania. She said nothing. Words belonged to Winter's lost. She heaved, flinging him not to safety but further over. Euron fell, arms windmilling. Scar flared once bright, then extinguished as water swallowed. Amphidrake shrieked, senses tether severed. It bucked. Asha and Jon braced. Drogon and Regal pounced, each seizing wing. Together they dragged Drake seaward where depth sank. Beast thrashed, but energy bled out. Viserion iced water around. Ice formed pan, ceiling. Amphidrake's final bellow muffled beneath rising lid. Dragons lifted seconds before slab froze complete, encasing creature half in, half out. Ice cracked under weight yet held. Green glow faded. Silence rode wind. On cliffs men cheered hesitant. Dragons wheeled triumphant above. Asha knelt on slick scale, breath ragged. Jon clutched her arm, pulled her toward longboat rowers calling. Behind them flakes of snow drifted onto ice tomb, hissing where residual heat lingered. From depths bubbles surfaced. Black leather scrap floated. Fragment of eye patch perhaps. It bobbed once, then current drew it under ice edge, gone. They burned Amphidrake's heart 3 days later on pyre of driftwood stacked at Banefort shore. Dragons lit fire. Flames green and red twisted spiral skyward. Bran watched through raven eyes until smoke shapes formed swirls closing gap where Scar had been. He whispered, "World wound mends." Still questions lingered. Shards scattered yet, priestess missing. Bells clanging in night surf though no wind. But for first time ocean looked merely water, not mirror of fear. Daenerys thanked Asha before flight northwards. "Fire owed salt," she said. Asha replied, "Salt remembers debt." She glanced to sea, where ice flows drifted like broken shields. "Dragons owe children bread too." Jon smiled faintly. Snowflakes caught in beard. Tyrion rolled map parchments, muttering about pitched battles costing less than pitched scorpions. That night Asha dreamed of goat kids grazing cliffs green again, of nets heavy with cod, of laughter not sharp as knives. A wave crashed loud enough to wake her. She sat in dark cabin, listening. Only wind. Far below in trench unseen, scale sliver cracked larger stone, warm again. Yet for now storms slept. And the isles breathed. Snowmelt streamed in silver ribbons down the flanks of the Banefort cliffs, whispering of a spring the Westerlands half believed would never come. Each day that passed without sight of black sails or iron talons felt like a muscle unclenching. Yet no one dared breathe too freely. On the strand where Amphidrake bones lay stewing beneath a crust of brine frost, the small folk still hung tokens of salt-plucked wreckage on driftwood crosses. Bits of bolt, slivers of scale, even a tattered scrap of Euron's red-stained banner. Part prayer against storm, part warning to gods that men had teeth of their own. Asha watched these relics one dawn while gulls wheeled overhead, their cries thin against the hush. She had come ashore alone for the first time since the battle, craving the lash of tide on her boots and the ache of salt air in her lungs. Jon Snow kept a distant cordon of guards on the rise beyond the dunes, honoring her wish for solitude but fretting all the same. She could almost feel his gaze, wary as a hound's, and wondered whether paranoia had made them kin. Kneeling, she sifted coarse sand through calloused fingers. A glint caught her eye, something half-buried where surf licked the gravel. She dug with knife tip until metal flashed. A broken link of chain, sea-black, fused at one end to glassy slag. The link was warm despite the chill. When she brushed away sand, it throbbed once, a pulse faint as heartbeats heard through walls. Her jaw tightened. She tossed the fragment into a pouch, cinched it, and turned toward the steps cut in cliff stone. As she climbed, waves popped against ice rims below like distant applause, bloodless and ominous. The memory of steam hissing from Amphidrake's sundered throat still lingered in her nostrils, sharp as forge fumes. Atop the bluff Jon awaited, Longclaw across his back. He studied her face as though reading a scroll written in tears. "You found something." "Trash," she said, but the lie scratched her tongue. She would show Bran first. The boy had spoken of wounds in the world. Perhaps he would know if the pulse she felt was heartbeat or merely grief echoing in bone. They rode north next morning with a column of mixed men. Ironborn who had sworn fealty to Asha, Northmen sworn to Jon. A few of Daenerys's unsullied whose sandblasted eyes took in snowdrifts like foreign seas. Across wind-raked fields rose the bones of winter barley that had never seen harvest. Ice clung to every stalk, turning them to candles of glass. On the 6th night fires of Winterfell broke the dark. Bran met them in the God's Wood beneath the heart tree, its red leaves rattling like restless tongues. Snow speckled Bran's hair though no flakes fell. The boy seemed to draw winter to his skin the way a hearth draws moths. Asha laid the chain link in his lap. Bran's fingers brushed it. Pupils rolled white like a wave crest. For a heartbeat all torchlight guttered. When his eyes cleared, he spoke not to Asha but to the tree. "Blood swims," he murmured. "I floats, seeking socket. Ship without deck drifts down the throat of a cave that leads only deeper." Asha exhaled steam. "Is it Euron?" Bran blinked once. "It is a question, not yet an answer." She swallowed irritation. Prophecy tasted like salt water when what she needed was steel. But when Bran pressed the shard back into her palm, it no longer throbbed, cold as coins on a corpse's eyes. That night, while wolves howled beyond the broken outer wall, Sansa convened council. Daenerys sat at one end of the long table carved of winter ash, Tyrion at her elbow, Quill already scribbling tallies of grain and boltwood, Melisandre a pool of red in shadows. Jon stood across, Asha beside him, and further down, almost an afterthought, Theon. His eyes skittered every time fire cracked. Sansa unrolled a map blotched by melted snow. "Cersei mustered the Gold Company at Bitterbridge," she said. "Word is she rides to King's Landing to gird against dragons. But rivers run thick with defeated men. She can't spare coin nor sword to dance with krakens." Tyrion snorted. "My sister plays lioness with nose for blood yet none to bleed." Daenerys tapped nail on table. "If Euron resurfaces, she might pour last gold into his coffers. A drowned ally costs less than a living one." Asha's laugh cut the room. "Cersei wed Euron once for ships. Now she's fewer ships, no husband, and memory of dragonfire scorching harbors. The lioness will gnaw her own tail first." But her bravado rang hollow to her own ears. She could almost taste the sea-sweet rot of Euron's presence when she closed her eyes. Storm's leave scent that lingers. Melisandre's voice slid between arguments. "Storm or no, the eye still turns. Where it gazes, wind obeys. Close the eye, and wind may slacken." Jon lifted brow. "Close it how?" "Salt and shadow," she said, offering nothing further. Sansa sighed.
Cryptic riddles feed no seed.
"We need actions." Her finger traced coastlines. "We must secure the Iron Islands. If Asha can hold them, they cannot birth new horrors. Jon, lead a contingent. Daenerys can patrol by air." Tyrion scribbled. "I'll calculate stores. And I," Melisandre interrupted, "will tend the wound." She glanced at Asha. "Bring shards to the sea where the world cracked. We shall see if needle finds vein." Asha stiffened. "You want the fragment back?" "Not only that," the Red Woman said. "You lure the wound to surface with its own splinters." Jon met Asha's eyes. "If there's chance to end it." She rolled shoulders. "I'll sail at dawn." The Black Allegiance left Moyle Harbor sliding over gray-green swells. Jon sailed with her, Sansa insisted, though he preferred dirt underfoot. He spent much of the voyage on Sterncastle brooding over water, gloved hand brushing hilt of Longclaw as though swords could cut currents. Theon kept to himself, mending nets as habit from boyhood. Unsullied spearmen drilled midships, their breath frosting in salt air. By the fourth day, reefs of old white jagged above horizon. Smoke curled from squat villages, cooking hearths, fishermen smoking cod, not war fires. Tide carried stench of kelp and something fouler, the char of alchemy, faint but distinct. Asha tasted it and spat over rail. They anchored off Bearded Crag, where Merona once held vigil. Shoreline rocks jutted like wet teeth, slick with emerald moss. No torches burned on cliff top. Asha led landing party by rope ladder. Snowflakes twirled. Elsewhere winter retreated, yet here it lingered. She felt the chain shard pulse again faintly, as if proximity to birthplace stirred memory. No tracks marred snow on the ridge. The hole where altar had stood now yawned a broad tunnel descending into cliff. Asha knelt at rim. Stone bubbled as if half-melted, veins of congealed green glass lining throat. The air rising was warm, smelling of wet iron. "Dragon burrow," Jon murmured. "Or grave. Or womb," said Melisandre, appearing like red candle in gloom. She held a copper bowl etched with tongues older than R'hllor. "Shards here." Asha placed fragment in bowl. Melisandre drew 6 more from silken pouch, relics collected by rangers scouring shores, and arranged them around central piece. She drizzled lamp oil, whispered a prayer harsh as sand scraping bone, then sparked flint. Flame whooshed, green at its core. Shards glowed, pulsing in synchrony. Wind died.
Snowfak hung motion.
In the bowl, flames leaned inward, spiraling down. Melisandre's eyes reflected twin pyres. "Offer blood," she intoned. Asha grimaced, sliced palm, let droplets hiss on shards. Jon followed, crimson bead rolling from glove tassel. Blood vanished without trace. After breathless pause, the shards shattered soundlessly, splintering into motes of light that drifted into tunnel like fireflies. A groan shuddered through rock. Distant crashing surf answered softer. Melisandre seized torch, beckoned. They descended, tunnel corkscrewed, walls changing from basalt to smooth green glass. At intervals, glyphs of kraken tentacles interlaced with draconic wings flashed, then dimmed. The heat increased. Coats came off, revealing sweat-slick undertunics. Unsullied stoicism faltered in wariness they could not name. They emerged into vast cavern where subterranean sea pooled blackly, faint phosphorescence rippling across ceiling. On a ledge above water stood Merona Waters and a score of rough men bearing torches. Her robe now woven with scale fragments, hair bound by circlets shaped like eye. She raised staff carved from Amphidrake's rib. "I feared you tardy," she called, voice carrying preternaturally. "The tide waits for no oath." Asha stepped forward. "You traffic in ghosts." Merona smiled.
Ghosts feed gods.
Melisandre narrowed eyes. "You serve a drowned patron." "I serve power," Merona said, "and power stirs below." She struck staff against stone. The pool churned, slow concentric ripples breaching shore. From depths rose a dome of shell, green cracked crimson, large as mead hall roof. Water sluiced off, steaming. Veins pulsed fiery black beneath surface. Jon's hand flew to sword. Asha's axe left belt. But still the shell slept. Merona gestured. Her followers produced casks, heaved them into pool. Cask seams burst. Wildfire streamed, blooming neon beneath water yet somehow not extinguished. Flames spread, outlining shell in shimmering aura. "The egg thirsts," Merona intoned. "Thirsts for blood of those who broke its sibling. Do you offer?" Unsullied raised spears. Jon stepped ahead. "End this or die with it." Merona's laugh echoed like tide in caverns. "I end nothing. World ends for me." She slashed palm with rib dagger, flung blood. A splattered shell, smoke curling. Shell fissured, hairline cracks snaking. Within, something hammered once. A dull boom like cathedral door. Water erupted. A tail fin rose, slapping ledge, sweeping torches. Men screamed, toppled into boiling shallows. "Back!" Jon shouted. Unsullied formed shield wall. But cavern tilted. The eggshell split fully, revealing creature larger than Amphidrake. Body forged in crucible of salt and flame. Wings stubbed, still forming. But tail like sea serpent, frilled with spines. Eyes opened, globes of pure obsidian streaked with pulsing emerald. Its roar swallowed sounds, reverberating like quake. Asha saw Merona crushed under falling debris yet smiling as blood fountained. Shards of staff flew. The new Leviadrake, name forged on her tongue, lunged, jaws snatching follower, swallowing headfirst. Melisandre hurled powders. Fire blossomed red, but water doused. Jon cried to retreat, yet Asha stood rooted. After all storms she would not run. She sprinted along curved ledge, steam-scorched cheeks. She leapt onto creature's flank, buried axe between scales. It barely noticed. She climbed using ridges, found fissure where shell not fully shed, plunged blade. Hot ichor spurted, burning leather. Beast snarled, twisting, tail smashing stalactites. Below, unsullied harpooned soft spots near gills. Many were flung aside. Jon searched for eye, readied thrust. Melisandre chanted louder. Flames flickered unnatural black. Suddenly the Leviadrake convulsed. Asha's palm burned. Chain link shard sewn into glove glowed white, reacting to blood coursing around her blade. She drove shard forward into wound. Pulse echoed. Creature shuddered, roar choking to whimper. Eyes dimmed. Shell cracks ignited green. Fissures raced body. Scales smoked. Asha ripped axe free, leapt into water as beast thrashed dying. Flames spread under hide, wildfire igniting bloodstream. In moments Leviadrake became pyre, cavern ceiling reflecting hell-green light. Water hissed violent steam.
Explosion rocket chamber.
Shock wave flung bodies against walls. Asha surfaced amid debris, ears ringing. Through mist she saw John dragging Melisandre upslope, unsullied hurting survivors. She swam to ledge, hauled out, collapsing amid shards of jade green glass cooling fast. Behind, the Leviadrake's carcass melted into pool, leaving only blackened ribs and a single piece of shell the size of Asha's helm. Its core shot through with dull red swirl, pulseless at last. Silence settled, broken only by drip of condensed steam. Unsullied eyed the pool as if expecting rebirth of rebirth. Melisandre knelt, palms scorched, breathing prayers tired and raw. "Needle found vein," she whispered. "Wound bleeds out." John offered Asha a hand. She rose, soaked and trembling, but alive. He squeezed her shoulder. "You ended it." "Ended one," she said. "Storms always gather somewhere." He sighed. "Then we meet them again." They climbed toward dawn, leaving cavern to darkness. Spring crept at last across Westeros. Buds shyly emerged on Winterfell's apple trees. Flocks returned to skies once patrolled by nightmares. At Pike, fisherfolk hauled nets brimming silver. Children chased crabs. On tide flats no longer glowing green at night, songs of tempest faded into tales for winter hearths, half believed, half denied. In King's Landing, Cersei dreamt of dragons burning, yet awoke to ravens telling of kraken threats quelled by North and Queen together. Her goblets tasted sour. She ordered scorpions doubled anyway. Daenerys flew circuits along coasts, but found only gulls and sails of honest trade. Above cliffs of Banefort she banked Drogon one sunset, casting shadow over memorial crosses. The dragon's roar stirred nothing beneath waves. She exhaled relief that tasted of ashed bone and salt. On Great Wyke a new Kingsmoot gathered. This time Asha stood alone on weathered stone, no dragon egg in hand, only promise of grain and nets heavy with fish. Voices rose. Most in opposition were too weary to shout long. When it came time to choose, the driftwood crown settled on her brow. She felt its weight lighter than burden shed beneath cliffs. Later she stood at prow of a ship renamed Storm's Ender, gazing west where sun melted into sea. She cast last shard of shell, taken from cavern, in arc of fire-tinged gold. It hissed, sank, and did not pulse again. Far below, in trenches where light never reached, something old stirred at stirring's echo, then slept once more. For now, and on winds carrying first sense of summer, gulls cried simply of fish and foam, forgetting storms that once taught them fear of sky. Iron-barked pines creaked beneath the first warm gusts of a shy western spring, their needles shimmering with thaw. On the wind rode mingled scents of fresh sap, distant heather, and the lingering mineral tang of old wildfire, like half-remembered thunder in a clear sky. Asha Greyjoy stood atop the highest spar of the Storm's Ender, arms spread as if testing whether the wind still owed allegiance to her name. Green-capped swells rolled beneath the prow. White foam licked a scar that ran the length of the fresh oak hull, the only outward reminder of fires quenched and bones broken when the sea had screamed. She had worn the driftwood crown for 3 moons, yet it remained alien on her brow. Driftwood, deadwood, sea-picked and salt-washed, seemed a mockery to any who understood how quickly death could feed itself back to life. Each morning she expected the brittle arc to crumble between her fingers. Each morning it held, smelling of brine and things too old for memory. Below, on the quarterdeck, men bent to work whose rhythms were older still. Tar caulking, net mending, rope splicing. The sound of knives scraping hide and fids tapping hemp threaded itself through gull cries. No one sang the old reeving shanties. Their hush was its own anthem, a pledge to days uncharted. Northeast off the port bow, the broken teeth of the Shield Islands gnawed at a pewter horizon. Half-collapsed watchtowers still smoked. Ash heaps glittered where green fire had once run riot. The Reach Lords now allowed ironborn longships to land when flags of parley flew, though a dozen crossbows followed every step. Asha meant to test that détente again. Fish for timber, trade cod for barley, bread for salt, life for life. But trade meant meeting those who had buried burnt kin. She steeled herself as the first gull banked away toward shore. Theon joined her, leathery face softened by morning sun. He leaned against the rail, gloved hands worrying a knot that needed no tightening. "Dreamt of the dragon last night," he said after a time. "The first one, Tempest. It flew over Pike again, but its wings dripped water, not fire. Everywhere the drops fell, the sea froze." Asha's gaze held the horizon. "Storms come back in dreams first. They test whether we still fear the wind. Do we? Fear is an oar," she said quietly. "You use it or you sink." He toyed with a whistle carved from whalebone. "Sansa writes that White Harbor's docks are ready for your envoy. They've salted a haul full of herring in your name. If herring buys cedar beams, we're richer than Old Town," she said. But the jest fell flat between them. A horn sounded forward, 3 short blasts. Asha turned. A black-winged shape wheeled high over the tallest mast. A raven, feathers silvered at tips. It dipped, perched on the ratlin, cawed once. Sailors muttered. Ravens were always omens. Silver-tipped ravens were conversation with the grave. The bird's leg bore a twist of pale ribbon. Asha climbed down, coaxed the raven with a scrap of salt pork. It allowed her to slip off the ribbon. No parchment, only the ribbon itself streaked with thin lines of sea-bound salt that sparkled green in the sun. She swallowed a chill. Only one woman she knew braided ribbons with that pattern. Merona Waters had died beneath a falling stalactite, smiling blood. Or so Asha believed. She handed the ribbon to Theon. "Keep this. Show Bran when we next touch Winterfell." Theon frowned at its weave. Thought the wound bled out. "Wounds scab," she said. "Scabs itch." Smoke rose from Thunderstone Keep in a lazy pennant as the storm's ender warped into its cove. Where once green dragonfire had walked the walls, scaffolds now bristled with carpenters. Ladders swayed like tired banners. Sawdust drifted on the breeze. On the outer ramparts, guards in green and white livery fixed wary eyes upon the approaching longship. Asha ordered her prow flag dipped, a kraken in gold on black, slashed by a crimson line to mark the new way. The flag's tail snapped, then drooped in meek salute. A woman in brigandine met them on the stone jetty. Bronze curls spilled from the rim of a steel cap. Paramount Lady Karais of House Seri introduced herself curtly, palm resting on dagger. The mask of courtesy did not hide the pain that sharpened her gaze each time she looked upon the kraken sigil. Asha stepped forward. "I bring 20 barrels of smoked cod and 10 of whale oil. Your towers need tar, yes? We ask barley and oak planks in trade." She paused softer. "And space to mourn." Lady Karais' throat bobbed. "The sea gave us nothing but child coffins, Greyjoy. Why should we buy its harvest?" Asha held her stare. "Because storms will come again, and we would rather stand beside you than atop your bones." The Westerlander's jaw tightened, but something behind the eyes melted, like lead turned white-hot then quenched. At last she nodded. "Follow." Granaries smelt of old grain and new fear. Wooden slats still bore char where escape sparks had scorched them. Lady Karais' steward counted poles of oak, rough-hewn but straight. Asha offered twice the cod barrels, wanting more beams than originally bargained. She had seen rot creeping in Pike's lower halls. The steward weighed cost against need, assented. While scribes inked tallies, Asha drifted toward an open courtyard. There she found a stone circle ringed by black scorch marks. In its center stuck a jagged lump of partially vitrified rock, obsidian twisted with iron. Asha knelt, laid palm upon its cold skin, felt a ghost of furnace heat. like breath from a living throat that had merely paused its exhale. Footsteps crunched behind. Lady Karai's stopped on the circle's edge. "That is all that's left of your monster," she said. "We dragged it from the harbor mouth." "All that's left?" Asha echoed, but the stone hummed faintly as if disagreeing. "You can take it," the lady offered, disgust and relief mingling. "No Reach child wishes to remember green fire." Asha traced a ridge shaped almost like a scale. "Some memories keep us honest." She rose. "Leave it. One day you'll tap it with hammer and know if the world is safe." They parted late that afternoon with barges creaking low under timber. As the island's cliffs fell behind, Asha pressed knuckles to brow. Wrestling, a headache kindled when her hand lingered on the obsidian. In her berth that night, she dreamed of standing beneath the sea, watching schools of silver fish scatter around a darkness shaped like a heart. Each throb pushed water in slow pulses. Around the heart, fragments of shell swirled like leaves on wind. She reached toward one. It sliced her palm and burrowed in, trembling. She awoke to her own muffled scream, Theon gripping her shoulders. Moonlight through the porthole found her hand slick with blood. No dream at all. A sliver of green glass protruded between the flesh of thumb and forefinger. Theon peeled it free, dropped it in a brass bowl where it hissed and dimmed. Asha's breath sawed. "It followed," she whispered. Winterfell's walls, blackened in places from ancient siege catapults and more recent dragon perches, greeted them under clouds bruised violet. Jon hurried to the east gate when ravens announced their arrival. On seeing Asha's bandaged hand, he ushered her to the great hall's antechamber, where Bran waited beneath a window carved in the likeness of a direwolf. Bran's gaze pinned the sliver before a word passed. He reached out. His fingers hovered a hair's breadth above the shard's pitted surface. His eyelids flickered like moth wings, white rolling up to reveal only pale moon sliver of iris. The room tilted. Candles guttered though no wind stirred. The shard vibrated, rose from Asha's palm, hung in air. Images slammed into all present visions like quicksilver spilled on slate. A spiral of black water around a lightless vortex. Bells fashioned of bone chiming in a current too deep for sun. Euron, hair streaming, eye alive with terrible joy, kneeling before a vast ribcage grown from coral. Green-tongued priests chanting in a tongue where every syllable was a drowning gurgle. Then the vision reversed. They flew backward through dark hallways of water, through cracks in rock, through a throat of molten glass, out a breach beneath old Wyke's sea cliffs. The shard dropped. Bran gasped. Sweat slicked his brow. Jon caught him before he slipped from the chair. "It is not dead," Bran whispered. "It only dives deeper." Asha's stomach nodded. "Euron lives." Bran shook his head faintly. "Not Euron. What he fed lives, and others feed it now. They call themselves the Deep Choir." Jon blanched. "How many?" "Enough," Bran said. "And growing. They gather shards like priests gather alms. They fold the world's bones into new shapes." His voice dropped to a child's tremor. "They want the roots of the world tree." Asha exhaled through her nose. "Then we cut their nets before roots bleed." She looked to Jon. "We need ships. Not raiders, war galleys, and maesters who know the deep. We have black sail vessels refitted with scorpion towers," Jon said, though doubt shadowed his tone. "Dragons can fly over water but cannot dive." Bran's eyes cleared, sharpening. "There is one who can walk both air and deep if wings are mended." He met Asha's gaze. Tempest's bones still lie in trench west of Lordsport. Core heat lingers. A shell of magic, cracked but not cold. Asha's pulse skipped. "You would raise that corpse?" "Not raise. Heal." Bran drew slow breath. "Magic mends magic. Shards can be unmade as well as shaped." Jon frowned. "And if healing fails? Then we bury it proper and trust death to keep its bargain." 4 days later, a fleet of 9 sailed from Pike. The Storm's Ender in vanguard, flanked by Iron Dawn and Quiet Reprieve, each mounting twin scorpions ashore-forged in Winterfell's smithies. Black hulls gleamed with fresh pitch, but above them flew banners of gray direwolf and black-slashed kraken entwined. Far overhead Drogon cruised in lazy spirals, Regal following, though both seemed uneasy over the restless sea. Below deck of the flagship, Melisandre stirred a cauldron whose contents shifted from red to emerald in rhythm with her whispered invocations. Bran lay nearby on a litter, body limp, skin paling to parchment as his mind flowed outward, tracing currents that had never known sun. Asha watched them both with equal distrust. Magic had won one victory but lost many. At twilight, they reached coordinates Bran had seen with ghost sight. The sea there was a fathomless indigo even the setting sun could not gild. Wind dropped, sails slumped, rigging groaned against stillness. Drogon banked, descending to hover like a thundercloud poised on invisible updraft. Bran stirred, his eyes opened. Gone were pupils, they glowed green as wildfire. Upright, unsupported, he stretched a hand seaward. Melisandre appended the cauldron. Its viscous brew splashed onto deck, then slithered between planks, dripping into the water. Where droplets struck, concentric rings spread luminous. Soon an entire circle 20 yards wide shimmered like a window on sunlit shallows though night enveloped. Asha leaned over bulwark and choked back a swear. Through the false brightness she saw the trench floor, strewn with bones. Ribs that could cage whales, skull fragments, bony spur of wing joint severed. And there, half buried in silt, the charred torso of Tempest, scales dull as lead, cracked where green veins once pulsed. Bran's voice issued deeper than man, layered like many speaking. Bind the sins to the wound, unmake the skin, breathe back the storm. Melisandre thrust a rod of black glass through the circle's center. The sea accepted it, swallowing without ripple. Threads of molten green snaked out, lashed skull pieces, rib ends, wing shards drawing them inward. Silence reigned but for crackle like distant hearth. Broken bone lifted, assembled in air within the circle. Scales knit, seams fused. Wings spread and recreased as if testing forgotten ligaments. A gale slammed the fleet. Masts bowed. Tempest's corpse, now skeleton reclad in midnight plates, heaved once, belching seawater mixed with smoke. Emerald glow flickered between gaps but did not stabilize. Bran's face contorted, sweat beaded. Melisandre cried out, blood trickling from nose. Sudden shout from crow's nest. Ship approaching, lights blacked. Asha snapped around. Southwest, silhouetted against the dying light, glided a low-slung vessel whose prow bore the profile of a screaming woman. The trader's wife, Euron's last refuge. But its deck swarmed with figures in cloaks of seaweed and scale, chanting in deep-throated harmony that set teeth rattling. At their fore stood a priest in robes shimmering oil-slick colors, face hidden by mask of beaten tin shaped like three eyes stacked vertically. The deep choir, bolts loaded, ropes readied. Asha barked for signal fire. Red flare arced skyward. Regal veered, loosing gout of flame that raked trader's wife from stern to bow. Wood charred, yet flames sputtered, snuffed by sheets of water that geysered from the very planks. Choirists raised arms. The sea obeyed their hymn, lifting walls of brine to deflect second flame. Then a sound like a conch horn but deeper vibrated hulls. Beneath the choir's ship a shadow ballooned, dwarfing even Tempest's half-risen carcass. A leviathan of spiraled shell and serpentine tentacles glowing sickly jade. Its spiral mirrored the one Bran had shown, a living echo of the trench vortex. Sprouting from its apex was a spire of fused bone, impossible to mistake, a haft grown from the amphidrake's skull. The choir chanted louder. Tempest's skeleton jerked as unseen tethers yanked, dragging it sideways. The rods of green light that knitted bones began to unravel. Bran cried out. Melisandre's flame guttered low, her hands fluttering like dying moths. Asha dashed to ballista. Aim for the spire, she roared. First bolt streaked. Wind shear deflected it into churning water. Second bolt struck shell, clanged off. The Leviathan's tentacles writhed, lofting pillars of water that slapped sails and doused torches. On deck men slipped, ropes snapped. Drogon dived, jaws wide, cone of orange fury. Flame struck tentacle roots. Char smoked but did not break. In return, the Leviathan spewed column of brackish vapor that corroded sailcloth midair. Drogon banked hard, one wing trailing tatters. Asha raced to Bran's litter. "Can you break their song?" Bran's lips trembled. "Song rides a spine. Cut the spine and the choir stutters." "The spire," Theon realized, already grabbing boarding hook. "Get me close." Asha seized helm, sheered toward Trader's wife. The gap closed, boarding lines flew. Unsullied poured across, clashing with coral-bladed spears of choir priests. Songs warped into screeches. On quarterdeck, Theon dueled the three-eyed priest. Tin mask turned, reflecting moon now high and stark. Priest hissed words that made air thicken. Theon's blood oozed from ears. He pressed on, hacking until coral spear snapped. With a roar, he thrust dagger under mask. Once, twice. Priestly song died gurgling. Choir faltered. Sea walls sagged. Yet the spire still thrummed, the true spine. Asha vaulted rail, sprinted along listing deck, leapt to Leviathan shell just as tentacles surged, seeking. She skidded on slime, drove climbing pick deep into Whirl Ridge, hauled herself upward. Wind howled, carrying fragments of Bran's will. Bind, cut, burn. She reached the spire base. Fused bone encasing Amphidrake's horn, pulsing green. Her axe already glowed where shard once pierced steel. She hefted, swung with every ounce of Kraken Queen's strength. Blade bit, sparks green as envy flashed. Crack spidered halfway. Second swing, crack widened. Tentacles lashed, one coiling leg, yanking. She screamed, slammed axe again even as she was hauled sideways. The spire snapped. For heartbeat nothing. Then silence imploded. An inward-sucking hush as if the sea inhaled deep enough to swallow dreams. Light shot out of Tempest's carcass in threads, snaking to broken spire, then back, chaotic. Bran's voice boomed across waves. "Storm, remember your name." Tempest's bones blazed. Scales regrew like lightning racing steel. Heart reignited, emerald eclipsed by dawn gold colliding. Flesh knitted, slick midnight armor veined with pale lightning. Wings unfurled, thrumming air into Tempest. Eyes, one green, one wildfire gold, opened, fixed upon the Leviathan gripping its tether. With a roar that shattered lingering spells, the reborn dragon lunged, jaws clamping on tentacle root. Steam exploded. Brine sizzled into ash. The choir shrieked, collapsed. Their ship rolled, rudder severed. Asha, freed from tentacle coil, slid down shell, hitting water hard. She kicked, surfaced beneath flurry of wing and flame. Drogon joined Tempest in duet of wrath. One breathing orange inferno, the other green-gold barrage. Tentacles shriveled, shell cracked, spire shattered wholly. The Leviathan thrashed, but fury of twin dragons, regal diving now to sear underbelly, proved final sermon. With a cavernous groan it sank, spiral vortex collapsing into itself, taking choir and wreckage to blackness where even dreams drown. When dawn bled silver, only small waves slapped hulls. Tempest circled once above storm's ender, then alighted on the sea beside, sending ripples that rocked hulls gentle as cradle. Its scales no longer wept green. They shone deep cobalt with veins of pale aurum. Asha hauled herself aboard by rope, collapsing to deck amid cheers. Bran lay unconscious but breathing steady. Melisandre knelt, eyes closed in near exhaustion yet smiling faintly. Drogon landed on mainmast like the world's largest gull, causing crew to scatter. Daenerys swung down on rope, boots thudding beside Jon. She gazed at Tempest warily, then at Asha. "Does it obey?" "It remembers," Asha said, voice raw. She stood, approached the dragon. His great head lowered, breath like forge heat but no longer corrosive. She touched snout. Scales warmed under palm without burning. "It knows the cost of storms." Daenerys nodded, drawing nearer. Between them, dragons exchanged low rumbles, conversation in a frequency too old for human translation yet rich with tempered power. Drogon dipped his head. Tempest answered with soft hiss. Peace but not surrender. Partnership. John studied horizon. What of the deep choir? Were they all aboard? Bran, rousing, answered hoarsely. Fragments remain in tunnels, in trenches, but spine cut, their song lacks rhythm. They may hum, never sing. Then we seal every cave we can find, Asha said, and we keep the wind honest. She turned to crew. Set course for Lord Sport. We have a home to rebuild, and a dragon to feed on hope instead of fear. Cheers answered, not lusty as raider cries, but resonant like hammer on new-forged steel. The fleet set sail. Dawn behind them painting torn clouds rose and gold. Months rolled. Barley grew tall in fields once salted barren. Fishermen whistled tunes of calm seas. Children raced dragon shadows across piers without ducking in terror. At Pike, masons carved a new seawall from blocks of fused glass. Tempest's gift in molten breath, stronger than basalt. On its parapet Asha walked alongside Daenerys one mist-blue morning while Tempest dozed on a languid swell, Drogon circling overhead. Dragons born of storm and fire, Daenerys mused. One born free, one forged in fear. Yet both choose peace this day. Asha smirked. Peace has simpler taste than victory. Cheaper hangovers too. From inland carried the clang of smithies forging plowshares out of weapons once hoarded. Ironborn youth no longer learned only how to raid. Some apprenticed to builders from the north, learning to HEW stone that would withstand fury of tide. Yet far beyond the horizon, in secluded monasteries atop the high towers' forgotten sister isles, whispers spread. Of seas that could sing, of bones that glowed in moonlight, of wind that tasted like old gods waking. Scholars argued whether the world had entered an age of glass or of storm or of both entwined. Some wrote warnings, others composed hymns, and somewhere, in salmon-run rivers under midnight sun, in fractured glaciers that sang as they cracked, in the heartbeats of men who dreamt restless, echoes of a drowned horn lingered. Echoes nothing more, but echoes wait, as patient as tides turning stone to sand. On Pike's seaward tower Asha lifted a spyglass, training it west. Only shimmering horizon greeted her, smeared gold by afternoon glare. She lowered the glass, fingertip brushing the scar where Shard once burrowed. Not today, she murmured. Maybe never, but if you come, we'll be ready. Behind her, Tempest stirred, wings rustling salt spray into glimmering mist. Drogon answered with rumble that shook gulls from parapet. Far below, shipwrights hammered rhythm steady as heart. And for the first time since bells of bone had chimed in deep black water, the wind over the Iron Islands smelled purely of salt, cedar, and the vast, unmarred promise of an ordinary day. The sea rolled in long, lazy combers the color of tarnished silver, each swell catching slants of late-morning sunlight before collapsing in a hiss along Pike's newly faced seawall. Stonecutters paused to watch the play of light on wet glass. Tempest glass, the locals called it, though most still whispered dragon ice when the overseers were out of earshot. Spades rang against mortar, gulls wheeled overhead, and the island's air, so long thick with the cinder sting of wildfire, now carried nothing harsher than the briny kiss of kelp. Asha Greyjoy paced the parapet barefoot, letting chill seep up through the tempered panes. Beneath her palm the driftwood crown felt lighter with every sunrise, as though each hour of tempered peace shaved slivers of guilt from its unseen weight. Even so, some mornings she woke convinced she could smell smoke again, only to find the scent no more than memory sliding away like a wave retreating down a shoal. Below, on the outer jetty, shipwrights guided a hull onto greased timbers, a new longship christened Hope Runner, its keel hammered from cedar donated by House Rowan and ribbed with oak hauled across the neck. Men cheered when the vessel took water cleanly, the bowsprit, a stylized kraken twisting round a direwolf, cleaving foam in a modest bow. She counted 3 black sail war galleys and 7 merchant cogs anchored farther out. More visitors in 1 week than Pike had seen in a decade that wasn't ruled by fear. Steps approached. Theon rested forearms on the breast-high battlement beside her, boots dangling into open air. He wore a plain wool jerkin, no rings, no rank, and kept a carving knife tucked in his sleeve more for old habit than need. "The grain wagons from Highgarden landed at Lordsport Dawn last," he said, squinting into the glare. "Captain reckons we'll have them up the cliff road before moonrise. That'll see us through planting and half the winter besides." Asha stifled a smile. Ironborn praising grain. Balon would spit seawater in his grave. Balon never watched children lick salt off rocks for supper, Theon muttered. He flicked a pebble over the edge. It bounced thrice and vanished. Below, a broad shadow rippled under the harbor's surface, too dark to be shoal and too smooth to be a school of fish. A moment later, Tempest's head pierced the water, sending fountains of spray across the wharf. Islanders shrieked and scattered, but the screams now bore more awe than terror. Within heartbeats, some children ran forward, tiny arms windmilling in hopes of catching stray mist. Tempest shook once, the thunder of its wings shuddering tools from racks. Sunlight slid along cobalt scales veined with pale gold. At its nape, a figure clad in leather the color of rusted iron guided reins of woven steel, Greyroot, Asha's best dragon wrangler, chosen for her uncanny calm and fearless knack with stubborn beasts. Greyroot tapped 2 fingers against Tempest's left horn. Obedient, the dragon eased its bulk against a reinforced quay originally built for siege trebuchets. Stone groaned but held. Theon exhaled. They still flinch, but not like before. They'll learn, Asha said. Someday gulls will be loudest thing on this rock again. A horn sounded from the watchtower, 3 prolonged notes, the call for inbound sail. Asha lowered music of the sea in her mind and strained to catch the watcher's chants carried on gusts. 2 cogs from White Harbor, a Drummond under Lannister crimson, and, she stiffened, a courier galley flying the crowned dragon of Queen Daenerys. Theon frowned. Messages usually came with the Queen's copper ravens, not full-built vessels that drank as much coin as armies. Maybe she's sending more builders, he offered. Or news, Asha said. Deep choir whispers. She pulled a thin coil of hemp from her pocket, plaiting absent strands of wind-blown hair away from her eyes. Ready the hall, Great Wyke's roundhouse, once a drinking den for reavers bragging spoils, had been repurposed into council chamber hung with mismatched banners. Direwolf, 3-headed dragon, golden lion, oak of Old Town, crab of the arbor. A patchwork of freshly stitched alliances. Beneath their shifting shadows sat the disparate heads of those alliances. Lord Davos Seaworth, fresh from a grain pricing tour. Lady Merrick Craighall, her left arm still bound in sling from the last Leviathan skirmish. Harlan of Harlaw, whose longbow across his lap served as both walking staff and negotiation reminder. And Bran Stark, his wicker sledge positioned beside the hearth where heat cheered neither skin nor sightless gaze. Daenerys Targaryen entered, flanked by Missandei and Tyrion Lannister. The queen's silver hair was bound in a single tail. No jewels glinted at her throat, only a polished dragonglass dagger. Tyrion carried a satchel bulging with scrolls. Missandei's calm masked the tension in her shoulders. Asha took the center stool, driftwood crown gleaming dull under torchlight. She tapped knuckles on table. "Speak plain," she said. Tyrion unrolled a parchment stamped with red wax. 2 nights passed. A Lyseni wine ship limped into Dragonstone with half her starboard burned away. The crew swears they were set upon by songs. No vessels in sight, no fires. Songs that filled their heads until pitch spontaneously combusted. They saw lights under the water, green as ever. He looked up. Only 30 leagues south of where your dragons slew the choir's Leviathan. Murmurs circled. Lord Davos scratched trimmed beard. Our last scouting sloop saw no movement in those waters a fortnight back. Magic moves when we blink, Bran said softly. Currents shift, bones drift, fragments seek new shape. The choir survives but fractured. It hunts any hull that strays from safe lanes. Asha bit the inside of her cheek. We've mapped 36 safe routes. Can't patrol them all. Daenerys laid a gauntletless hand on the table. That's why I propose a beacon chain, powered by alchemist wildfire but controlled, encased in valves rigged to burst only when keyed from shore. She met Asha's eyes. Glass lenses on towers would project green flame high enough dragons and sailors alike can see 20 leagues. If any beacon flares unscheduled, we know the choir is near that lane. Asha's brows drew together. Wildfire towers across my seas? One rogue spark. Wildfire saved King's Landing once, Tyrion replied, folding fingers. Under sufficient caution, it can guard again. Lord Harlaw grunted. Caution is seldom an iron-born virtue. So we teach it, Asha snapped. She turned to Bran. Will beacons stir the deep? Bran's voice drifted. Light lures eyes, yes, but eyes already seek. Better to guide gaze than to wait blind. Lady Craighall shifted. The Reach can supply limestone for the towers, but we'd need the Citadel to lend architects. Tyrion produced another sealed missive. Archmaester Marwyn volunteers, claims this project perfect union of science and sorcery. He prattled on about mirrors of Valyria until I left him talking to himself. Asha considered. We'll build 3 pilot towers. One here at Great Wyke's North Headland, one on Banefort's tallest bluff, one on Dragonstone. If they prove safe, we stretch the chain to Bravos and beyond. Daenerys nodded. Agreed. Davos tapped table. Who funds? Joint purse, Asha said. We pay in fish and slate. Dragonstone adds coin. The Lannister Drummond outside. Let its captain carry my pledge to Casterly. 500,000 stags in oak timber debt erased if they supply wrought iron for tower lattices. Merrick Craighall blinked. My liege may balk. Then I'll lend him grain, Davos said. Stubborn men soften when belly's full. Silence settled, broken by quill scratching as Missandei lifted promise to parchment. In the hearth, a log split, sending sparks like green fireflies swirling. Illusion or omen, no one remarked. By midsummer, the first beacon rose upon the basalt knuckle of Breaker's Point. Engineers bolted ribcage iron into a spiral tower reminiscent of dragonbone turned to stone. Atop, alchemists supervised the insertion of a green glass sphere encasing a single flask of wildfire. Asha watched the install from deck of Hope Runner, muscles tensed at every creak of pulley. When the sphere locked into gimbaled cradle, the crowd below issued a collective sigh. Marwyn shuffled forward, hands blackened from soot. Ignition test at sundown, he announced. Visibility should be 15 nautical leagues. A messenger from Harlaw arrived breathless before twilight. 3 fishing smacks had vanished east of Lordsport.
Noreki, no salse drift.
Villagers heard odd humming at night, the sort that sets dogs to whining. Asha ground teeth. Sundown be damned. Light it. Marwyn sputtered, protested calibration. But the Queen's raven nod from high snarling perch silenced him. He gestured and a novice touched flame to the valve's telone trigger. Like a lung inhaling 200 years of slumber, the sphere flared alive. A pillar of viridian twisting skyward, silent, almost serene. The water half a league out glowed in response. Small luminous motes swirling like plankton. Dread prickled Asha's arms. Waves around the beacon rolled outward, once, twice, like heartbeats magnified. Then stilled. No Leviathan surfaced. No song broke the hush except gulls scattering. Somewhere behind her, Bran exhaled a word that might have been balanced. Asha didn't relax. Let it burn 4 quarter hours. Then quench. That night she slept on deck, driftwood crown strapped to belt like a promise she could not misplace. In dreams she drifted again beneath black water. The heart was gone. The shell fragments drifted slower, as though tides no longer hurried them. But she sensed them still, watchful, wary, like wolves just beyond firelight. She woke to dawn wind teasing loose strands across her eyes. No echo of wildfire, just wood smoke from fishermen's breakfasts. She closed eyes again, breathed salt, and for the first morning in memory smelled nothing of fear. 2 years passed. Seasons played their old familiar game. Summer too brief, autumn gold, winter tantrum, spring uncertain. The beacon chain grew from 3 to 9, each tower a silent sentinel blinking emerald only during test drills. Merchants began plotting routes by flash intervals. 2 short pulses from Dragonstone, 1 long from Banefort, steady burn when storms threatened vision. The deep choir never mounted a concerted attack. Twice small factions surfaced near Old Town's shoals. Each time Beacon Flare called dragons and Pike's war fleet in time to drive them down. Survivors muttered of Sister Fathoms and the shell that yet sings. But none ever reappeared to finish their verse. In the Reach, Lady Karais hosted Asha in Thunderstone's rebuilt Great Hall. Oak beams soared where Char once festered. Asha gifted her a jet-black drinking horn carved from the Leviathan's fused spire, rimmed in silver. Karais hung it over hearth that night, toasting peace until dawn bruised the hills. Across the sea, Bravosi traders began stamping cargo manifests with the braided sigil of Direwolf and Kraken. Ships guaranteed safe passage by Pike's Dragon Ward. Coin flowed. With it rose stone houses on islands that once only birthed salt-planked hovels. Children learned letters from roaming maesters paid in barley and wool. One by one, the shrines that Euron had filled with bone bells fell silent. New tide pools formed where their sand foundations eroded, washing secrets back to the deep. Tempest grew as dragons do, wings spanning nearly hammock to horizon, breath hot enough to fuse iron nails into liquid pearls. Yet its eyes, once wildfire hungry, now mirrored cobalt calm. Drogon remained the mightier in flight, but it was Tempest who preferred the loops above wave troughs, carving spirals no Leviathan could mimic. Fishermen claimed the dragon kept pods of herring near, driving them into easy nets. Whether truth or tall tale, Pike's smokehouses never lacked stock. On a chill evening 3 winters after the Leviathan's fall, Asha stood again on the seawall alongside Daenerys. The queen wore a cloak faintly iridescent, gift of Myrish weavers, but wind flattened it to her frame. "Do you ever worry it begins anew beneath us?" Dany asked, gaze on a star winking seawards. Asha shrugged. "Worry? Let it. Worry reminds me to keep scorpions oiled, men sober." She paused, half-smile crooked. "But fear? Not so much anymore." Daenerys touched the dagger hilt at her hip. "Fear once ruled my life. I think I miss it in small measure. Sharpens the edge." "Edges cut friend and foe," Asha said. "Better keep them sheathed until need." She stared at the beacon beyond, its lamps dark in the moonlight. "We'll know need soon enough." Sails appeared next morning, white and silver, topped with stag crowned by spikes of flame. A Baratheon envoy at last, come to negotiate their slice of safe seas. Theon laughed when Harold announced Lord Gendry's title, Master of Forges and High-Tide Hammer. "What is it with you mainland kings and hammering?" he teased over ale that night. Gendry only grinned, rolling shoulders like Smith readying anvil. "Metal yields to hammer or rusts. I aim to forge." His gaze lingered on Tempest preening wings in the bay. "Figure you'd know a thing about reforging." Asha found she did. She carried the memory of shards still, tucked inside scars that no longer ached. Some nights they glimmered beneath skin, twin constellations under lamplight. A reminder that wounds heal not to erase but to instruct. Years passed again. Bran Stark, grown thin and ethereal, faded one crisp winter's day while watching snow drift onto the Wolf's Wood. Ravens filled Winterfell's skies for an hour, turning the air into swirling charcoal script. When they departed, the beacon at Dragonstone burned green for a full minute in silent honor. No Leviathan rose. At Bran's funeral pyre, Melisandre appeared, her hair now white as salt. She spoke 7 words to the flames and vanished before ash cooled. Some claimed she walked into the fire and never stepped out. Others swore they saw her on a Bravosi quay months later, singing lullabies to drowned children. Asha suspected truth bore aspects of both. Generations budded. The first child born on Pike who never saw a single raid at sea reach 10, cuts his finger on a mussel shell, and did not equate the sting with fear, only with the sea's blunt reminder that even pearls begin with grit. His mother told him stories of the storm dragon who guarded nets. He fell asleep imagining Tempest's scales glittering like a second night sky. In King's Landing, Queen Cersei, long outmaneuvered and half forgotten, died choking on wine she'd sworn was unpoisoned. Tyrion drank a toast so silent no one heard the cup click the table. He sent Asha the news tied to a silver raven feather. Old monsters rarely die in battle. They swallow themselves in the dark. Asha sent back, then keep the dark well lit. Decades later, after new lords took old names, after beacon towers doubled until the sea at night looked like a necklace of fallen stars, after war became as distant as a half-forgotten smell, the tide one dawn laid a bell of bone on Lordsport Beach. Children found it, its surface etched with faded scrawls in the gurgling tongue. They brought it to the hall giggling, for it made no sound no matter how they shook it. Asha, now silver-haired and walking with cane carved of beacon glass, turned the bell in gnarled fingers. Inside, nothing but dust of ages. She set it on the mantel above the harbor window. It remained silent for a generation, gathering spider webs. Then, one quiet night years hence, a granddaughter of the muscle-cut boy stood watch alone. A sudden gust rattled shutters. From the empty bell came a single, reluctant chime, soft, almost questioning. She started, peered into darkness beyond the glass. Far out on the mirror-flat sea, the beacons burned steady, their counts unchanged. The waves whispered homey secrets on the rocks. The girl exhaled and moved to bank the fire. The bell gave no second note. In a cavern miles beneath, where the choir's last echo curled in dreamless sleep, a sliver of ancient shell shifted, sliding from one silt mound to another. Water embraced it, cradling until friction warmed the fragment to a glow faint as dawn behind cloud. Around it lay centuries of stillness. The fragment cooled, the heartbeat beneath stilled. High above, tempest stretched in moonlit air, wings stirring mist from a fjord mouth. It inhaled deeply, tasting the world. Only salt, cedar, and hearth answered. Satisfied, the storm-born dragon folded its wings and slept on a tide that no longer feared its shadow. And so the sea endured, scarred but calm. Each rolling crest a page where the wind wrote stories of storms past, and the children of iron, wolf, and fire read them only as warnings, never again as prologue.